attention on deck.
I try, believe in balance. See? Right here. Balance. Right there it is.
Better turn off the phone.
Chocolate balances everything.
That's true. Okay. Let me get my microphone. I'm gonna do this. Like that. Welcome back. So we are reconvening the Planning Commission meeting, and I believe that we have agreed on a vision and two guiding principles. So next up, I believe on the list is economic development.
I would pick up on the discussion that we had earlier where I mentioned that the economic development issue for me is has a little bit of extra importance when it comes to guiding principles, in large part because it is not a separate element, subject element in the general plan. So, but it nevertheless drives so much of what is what will be in those elements. It's a driving force behind a lot of the general plan, and it doesn't have its own element, so I gave it extra weight in my version. That's why, to pick up on the earlier fragmentary discussion that we had on that.
Mr. Worcester, you had a comment?
Well, I like what Mr. Tuno's done in this section.
Other comments on that? I mean, I have a couple, but,
You go.
oh, me go, okay.
We won't laugh, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Ted. Well, in Commissioner Wooster's first economic development guiding principle, I think, I understand what you're saying, but it seems to like be in the negative, should avoid unnecessary, because I think what you're really trying to get at is that we should be business friendly. So, and I think that's what, Commissioner Tuno is also saying, is like, let's be like business friendly. And if, let me see, it's on the other page. No, it's over here. And really, that's what the Planning Coalition, as well as the working draft of the guiding principles, it's really, I feel they're all trying to get at, we should be business friendly to business and manufacturing, agricultural, all of our productive resources, as well as we should be friendly to people that are visiting our communities and certainly stimulate our economy and provide jobs and investment through recreational outlets and hiking and biking and trails. I think those three options have that same thing in common, that we're talking about business friendly for people doing business here in the county and business friendly basically for tourism and the visitor industry.
The silence is deafening.
I don't know, I was just throwing it out. I mean, is there some agreement that that's what, is that what each of the versions, I read that in each of the versions.
Can I give you a piece of history?
Sure, Ted.
Okay.
Move the microphone up, please.
Yes, microphone. We all want to hear the piece of history.
Thank you.
Back when some of you were maybe still in high school,
Now, this would have been in the early 80s. I was the chairman of the Economic Development Committee of the Chamber of Commerce. And it dawned on us that, gee, there's some sources of money that, as part of the Chamber of Commerce, we weren't eligible for, like CETA money in those days. And, but as a private corporation, we were eligible for. So we started the Economic Development Corporation, and I was the incorporating president of it at the time, and for several years after that. And we tried a lot of things, most of which weren't very successful for a number of reasons. But finally, the Board of Supervisors kind of woke up to the problem is that we didn't have any money. And finally, the board came up forth with some money, and we hired a economic development director who was a professional in that business. And right away, that's when we got the retirement community, they call it over in Angels. We got them on, and a small molding factory up in the Arnold area, and we're working on something at the time in McKelvey Hill. Things were finally happening. And about that time, the county ran out of money. And so they cut us off, and everything just went downhill. And now I think they finally figured out that without money, we couldn't survive. And so finally, we kind of shut down the business. And I made it clear to everybody, I thought, that I still had all of the incorporating papers. I still had all the things that gave us a C3 classification for tax purposes and all of that. So if the company wants to start up again, you don't have to go through any of that. Just let me know. I'll give you the papers, and you can change the names of the officers, and we'll be in business. Save a lot of time and money. No, they decided they were going to start a new company, and they had the same name and everything, but they went through all this expense and time to get all the stuff that I had offered them in hand. And to this point, I don't think they're really a very active organization, are they? And it may be the same reason. I don't think they have the funding to be able to afford somebody professional to run it. Aren't you familiar with that? Aren't you involved in that to some
No,
degree?
not at all.
Well, anyway, after we finally
I don't think we've gotten to the point yet.
we finally got all that out of the way and thrown away and burned the files and all that, and then they decided they started to start up, but they never asked for any of that material. They just wanted to start up from scratch. And with that kind of an attitude, I think that's part of the economic development problem, is we don't have anybody to spearhead it that knows what they're doing.
That could be a problem, yes. I agree.
There is an economic development committee that is, the meetings are held in Sonora. Larry Cope runs those meetings, and we do have one of our supervisors that is a representative of that committee. We also have a backup for that.
That's actually, it's a Central Sierra Economic Development District. It's an EDA-funded
Yeah.
organization,
Yeah.
a multiple county. Mhm.
I know that they had grant funds that came in, but they dispersed those grant funds, but I don't believe that those funds were going to come even close to what you would need to talk about hiring somebody. So I think a lot of work needs to be done there.
So kind of getting back to economic development in the general plan and guiding principles. Again, do we want to just start with one of these?
I think
And-
there's sort of two basic principles that I see sort of throughout this. One is the county wants to promote, encourage, I'm not sure what the exact verb is, allow, support economic development. We need economic development. The other, and that sort of covers a broad range of, all forms, retail uses, businesses, extractive industries, whatever it is that promotes, creates jobs, and creates income for the residents and the county. I think the other component that I see is that we are reliant upon and we support the tourism industry. And so I see those are the two main points throughout these, and I'm not sure how the best way to word that, but I think there's a way that we can bring those two, either, two separate statements or a single statement that says, again, the general plan, the goals and policies of the general plan. One of the guiding principles of these is we want to see economic development occur in the county, and we want to promote tourism.
I've got a recommendation, just by chance.
Does this help sort of direct focus your
Yes,
energy? So.
because I agree that there are two. One has to do with our business friendliness to local businesses, and the other one is our attractiveness and accommodations for visitors. So if the first one, throw it out here, the county will be business friendly with land planned and zoned for business development and clear and efficient planning, building, and environmental health policies and procedures conducive to job and economic growth. As an idea.
That's a good idea.
What are you reading from?
Her notes.
My notes?
Oh, your notes. Okay,
Is that okay?
no, you have to share them with everybody.
And then, let me just throw out the other one would be, which is similar to but different a little bit from the Planning Coalition. National and international visitors will value our unique assets and productive resources, historic communities, world-class wineries, recreational areas, and working landscapes, creating jobs and revenue for economic expansion.
Okay. My comments would include the following. I agree that tourism is an important factor in the local economy. I also agree that it's probably too important to the local economy because it is cyclical, and we don't all have restaurants and motels and things like that. If you total number of jobs in the county that are tourism related, I'm sure it's significant, but the thrust of my proposed language, because we are looking ahead to 30 years and because we know we need to grow the economy, we need to grow it in a lot of areas, and we need to be open to all kinds of new jobs that might occur from someone saying, I want to build this here, I want to move a plant here, I want my company to have an operation in this county. It may have nothing to do with tourism. They just want to be here because they like, a lot of companies locate in an area because they know their employees are going to want to live there. That happens. So I think we place too much emphasis on tourism if we hold it out as a separate goal equal to all other economic growth goals. Also, I think that the concept of economic growth, I think it's important, and that's why I put it in here. It's important for the reader to understand that the county knows where that comes from. The county could say it's for economic growth, but without the realization that the county doesn't have as much to do with that. The county can stand in the way of that, but it can't really make it happen.
So you're saying we should all understand where our economic growth is going to come from? And you think that's where? Where is our greatest economic growth?
30 years from now? I don't know.
Where is it today? Where should we be? Where do we think the greatest economic growth in terms of job and investment is going to be in the next 20 years?
I don't think we should say what we think it ought to be or what
I'm
we
just
think it will
asking
be.
you, because it seems to me like you're saying that it's important for us to understand where our economic opportunities.
Oh, by that I mean the private sector is the one that drives this. the
And
county can-
again, I would argue with you that it's the private sector is not the biggest job generator in this county.
And you know what? It's always a problem when a county or a city, for that matter, that the chief employer and the best jobs are with the government.
That may be not the ideal situation, but it's still, we're dealing with reality. Probably public service, public government is, if you included all the branches, is the largest employer in this county.
I'm sure you're not saying that economic growth in the county will be driven by the county government getting larger,
That's
therefore
so
creating
true.
more
Yeah,
jobs.
I agree with you. Yes.
Okay? Because
Right.
that's,
But I would say it's also the largest job growth will be in the services sector, leisure and hospitality. That's where all the new jobs are projected to be.
you could be right. You could be right. And if that happens, it won't be because we projected it to happen.
That's true. That's why it's important to accommodate, to allow for growth in
All,
businesses.
right, all
Yes,
sectors.
Yes.
Right, allow for is exactly the right language, allow for. Because that's all we can do is allow for it or get in its way.
And we can also plan for it. We can do things that will be conducive to certain types of business growth.
Sure, with respect to
Land.
allowing for it, for example, is carving out areas for M1 and M2.
True.
And commercial this and commercial that. That's what we do, that's what allowing for it means.
And I think allowing for it would be adding mixed-use development in historic downtowns.
Could
That's
be.
allowing for it.
Could be.
Yeah.
Those are all details that you wouldn't put in a guiding principle.
That's true.
But-
No, I was just trying to get clarification.
No, we're in agreement here, but I think, and I give attention to tourism in this version, as it deserves, because it's a big deal, but I want to make it clear that we can't be myopic on when it comes to where the economic growth is going to come. We don't know. It's going to be depending on what people want to do with their resources, and if we have an open mind toward that, then we're apt to grow in any number of areas that we don't even know about right now.
And I would think supporting what you're saying is that it's important to plan for and accommodate entrepreneurial growth, make sure that we've got, places where entrepreneurs can have a small, shop and a startup and grow our own businesses, because frankly, the leisure industry do not provide very high wages or livable wage jobs. So you wouldn't want to base a strategy simply on the visitor industry.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think we need to open more avenues towards technology, because business doesn't come here because our county is lacking in technology.
True.
The visitors that come to our town that stay in the vacation rentals and buy homes in the area, the biggest complaint they have is that we don't have technology services in our county. So I think our economic growth, if we want to see good economic growth and good companies come here that can provide good paying jobs like you're referencing, we need to be focused on what we're going to do to bring technology to this county.
So where are we with economic development?
We need somebody to pick a plan that we can tear apart.
There you go.
So let me offer
I
this
did have
suggestion.
I did offer some. You guys did a pretty good job with them.
I didn't, you read it so fast.
Oh,
And I'm a
okay.
visual person, so I have to read it.
Okay.
Well,
Shall I read it?
why don't you read yours again?
Okay.
And then what I did was pull some, what I felt were key sentences out of Commissioner Tuno's write-up. And maybe between the two, we can
Okay.
merge them and come up with something we all agree on.
So the county will be business-friendly with land planned and zoned for business development and clear and efficient planning, building, and environmental health policies and procedures conducive to job and economic growth.
Rather than be specific about what procedures,
Mm-hmm.
you just need more generalized, county standards and rules or something like that?
Sure.
Because there may be others that affect development that could be covered in the general plan.
Read your second one.
Oh, about the tourism?
Thank you.
It was mostly just very parallel with the existing one. National and international visitors will value our unique assets and productive resources. And then in parens, historic communities, world-class wineries, recreational areas, and working landscapes, creating jobs and revenue for economic expansion.
You see, for me, that focuses too much on the leisure industry, the tourism industry. Now, Mr. Maurer's version, I don't have it exactly word for word in mind, but seemed to be more broad-based, more all-inclusive. Do you mind reading it again? Did you?
Well,
I think it was mine
it
with
was
your...
yours, just rather than specify planning, building, and environmental
Say-
management, just be more general as far as the county's rules and. So what I was, then just to throw it out there for contemplation, on the draft statement from Commissioner Tuno, the third paragraph down in economic development, about the middle sentence, the county desires to allow economic growth and foster it where possible. To me, that's the nut of what you've said in your several paragraphs. The next paragraph down, the county understands that its economy relies heavily on agriculture, mineral industries, recreation, and tourism, and desires to support these endeavors where practical. I think that's a real key line as well. And then on the back side, the first full paragraph talks about tourism, and maybe we've already covered it in the previous section, but I think that is...
You like the tourism sentence?
As tourism is fostered by the natural beauty of the
Yeah.
region, the county will endeavor to preserve that feature where practical and where such preservation will not unduly thwart the desire of a diversified economic growth. I think those three sentences sort of get to the key components of what you're saying, and maybe we need to, like we did with the role of general plan, add some of the rest of your discussion into the introduction.
Vaughn, read your first one again, please. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm not going anywhere. The county will be business-friendly with land planned and zoned for business development and something like clear and efficient. How about just goals and procedures conducive to job and economic growth? Something like that.
Let me offer something. I like the direction that Mr. Maurer
I do too.
is going in. I would have, I would suggest a couple of additions to it. Excuse me. Those components that he picked out, but I think we ought to be talking about the need for diversity, which those other components do not address. So the last sentence of my draft would pick up that theme. And I would suggest the first sentence of that section, the county needs an improved economic climate. So it would start there. It would go to the third sentence of the third paragraph that Mr. Maurer underlined or picked out for us. The first sentence of the paragraph following that. The tourism sentence on the back page, and followed by the diverse economy sentence after that.
I'm not sure I followed all of that.
Oh, okay. It's not too hard.
Well, you might actually read it instead of just refer to
Sure.
the sentence.
You're very good. Okay, so we would read as follows. I'm starting with, so that you can read along with me, the first sentence of the section. The county needs an improved economic climate for the prosperity of its citizens, for the livability of the county, and to enhance the tax base or in order to provide needed services and to put the county on a sound financial footing. The county desires to allow that growth and foster it where possible. So instead of that growth, it would be
Economic.
that economic, give me that again,
Allow
Kelly.
economic growth.
Which is the county desires to allow economic growth and to foster-
Economic
Yeah, just
growth,
replace that
comply
with
with the
economic.
first sentence, and foster it where possible. The county understands that its economy relies heavily on agriculture, mineral industries, recreation and tourism, and desires to support those endeavors where practical. Tourism is fostered by the natural beauty of the region. The county will endeavor to preserve that feature. You could say those features, but if that feature is good enough, where practical and where such preservation efforts will not unduly thwart the desire for diversified economic growth, nor the rights of property owners. Lastly, a more diverse economy will result from entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise which the county desires to foster, which I stole from the CPC. I believe.
I don't think they'll mind.
No, I don't think so either. I think I stole one or two other things from them too. But that would be the complete passage.
I don't like the first paragraph.
This first sentence?
Yeah.
Well,
What if we change it to, rather than the county needs?
Yeah.
The general plan intends to promote
There we
an
go.
improved economic
I can live with that.
climate.
Yeah.
Good. Agreed.
So,
That kind of covers the basis, and I think that's sufficient to give direction, which is what it's intended to do.
Public comment?
and I do think it covers the bases of all of the previous comments and submittals from, I think it holds true to kind of the working draft and the CPC. Yes?
There was something in your first one that I keep,
I will. Yeah. What?
read your first one again, because there was something in there that,
The county will be business-friendly with land planned and zoned for business development and clear procedures and policies, kind of, because we're taking out specifics, conducive to job and economic growth.
I like the county will be business friendly.
You know, I like that too. Part of what Fawn is offering there
Can we
goes
insert
into
that
my
into the first
Unit
sentence?
7
I think we should.
on government, because it talks about how the government's going to look at its procedures and whatnot to make it more business-friendly. That's what I picked up from your language.
Me too.
But that's fine. In fact, it's perfectly fine to have it in a couple of places, because I think it is an important concept, and it certainly has everything to do with economic development. Like I had mentioned, the county can foster it or stand in its way, and what you're saying is this is a guideline to it fostering economic growth. So I would take your sentence and stick it in here wherever you think it goes best.
Okay.
How about adding the phrase business-friendly after improved? The general plan intends to promote an improved, business-friendly economic climate.
You're looking at the first sentence, and you're slugging it in, or you're adding a sentence.
I'm just adding the
Adding
phrase business-friendly
business-friendly.
into that.
Sure.
Promote that.
But you, I think you had a little specificity to it that has some
Yours-
value to it.
You're still you're wanting to see something about the clear and efficient, like,
That was
planning.
it. It was the,
I think that actually gets into more of a goal or policy than an overriding principle.
you might be right.
Might,
And this is where it gets sort of gray. Where does
Right.
one become a policy, one become a goal?
I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
So
You're
it
right.
sounds like we've got some consensus going here, so maybe I'll open it up to the public and maybe perhaps start with, Peter, do you have a good, could you read what we've got so far? So that we're all understanding the same?
The general plan intends to promote an improved, business-friendly economic climate for the prosperity of its citizens, for the livability of the county, and to enhance the tax base in order to provide needed services and to put the county on a sound financial footing. The county desires to allow economic growth and foster it where possible. The county understands that its economy relies heavily on agriculture, mineral industries, recreation, and tourism, and desires to support those endeavors where practical. As tourism is fostered by the natural beauty of the region, the county will endeavor to preserve that feature where practical, and where such preservation efforts will not unduly thwart the desire for a diversified economic growth, nor the rights of property owners. A more diverse economy will result from the entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise, which the county desires to foster.
Okay. So anyone in the public wish to comment on this proposed revision to the guiding principle regarding economic development?
I just wanted to say on the last sentence, you may want to turn it around, because when it says, a more diverse economy will result from entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise. I would say period, because it goes on to say, which the county desires to foster. Applying, will the county, is it only if the county agrees or desires to foster that particular creativity or that particular expertise? I think it's better if we just say period at the end of expertise.
Where we say the general plan desires to foster a more diverse economy, et cetera.
Okay.
Thank you.
The only comment I would make is regarding the statement, as tourism is fostered by the natural beauty of the region, the county will endeavor to preserve that feature where practical and where such preservation efforts will not unduly thwart the desire for diversified economic growth nor the rights of property owners. I think after the "and," it starts to get negative, and we've been trying to avoid the negatives. So if it's just said, as tourism is fostered by the natural beauty of the region, the county will endeavor to preserve that feature where practical, period, I think we'd avoid the negative part. Also, the implementation of that could be dicey. As we move into the review of the general plan, there are provisions of the general plan that call for things like Quimby fees and exactions from new development to, provide parks and things like that. And we wouldn't want to use this to say, well, we can't have that because that's interfering with private property rights. So I guess if we could keep it on the positive, that would be the only change that I would make.
Okay.
Just one little minor thing. I think you mentioned saying those features instead of that feature at some point, right?
Those features instead of that feature. We could, yes. That's an easy fix.
Just listening and responding to it is quite difficult. One phrase or a couple of words that concerned me is the words "where practical." That's undefined. It can be interpreted in many ways. I think it would be much clearer just to make a declarative sentence about what you mean. And of course, they're all, what's where practical, somehow, I don't know why you need to emphasize that. It's built into the process and the law, and there are constraints, and there are regulations, and there are competing interests, and so forth. So where practical somehow could be used to loop back to contradict something within the plan or that you don't like. I think good, clear writing is just going to make a nice statement of what you want and get the where practical. I think it would, it's just a more coherent way to proceed without adding an element of ambiguity. Thank you.
That's an easy fix, where he's talking about desires to support those endeavors. Just remove the "where if practical." That's easy to pop a period in there. It's not a big deal, do you think, David?
Well, I'll comment on that as well as Mr. Infazino's position. The general plan is never going to be followed absent debate on what can or can't be done pursuant to the general plan. It's never going to happen. There's always going to be a debate. There's always going to be judgment calls. And the phrase, where practical, is consistent with that. Yes, there will be a debate at some point in the future, possibly, over what's practical to do and what's impractical to do, but at least you know what you're having the debate over, practicality. So where practical is actually consistent with everything in a general plan. There are very few absolutes when it comes to, at least for the guiding principles. So, it's a guiding principle. It's not a implementation bullet point, and it doesn't invite any more debate than would be there anyway. Secondly, on the issue of negativity, I just don't see where the language, where such preservation efforts will not unduly thwart the desire for a diversified economic growth, is negative.
I think it must be the thwart part.
Well, thwart, let's say that you were a person who had an idea for some project, and that project would be located on a piece of land that somebody else thinks is full of natural beauty. Okay, well, his view of that sentence would be extremely positive. Good, because it says I get to have my project considered, even though the piece of property that it would be sitting on is right now pretty beautiful, and it won't be so beautiful once that's on there. So this is not, what's negative to somebody is positive to somebody else. I think this, if our goal is a diversified economy, then we're going to be playing this balancing game down the road. And the preservation of the beauty, of natural beauty, in other words, in favor of our tourism industry, which is what that sentence is all about, cannot trump everything else. That's what this sentence intends to convey, is that the need to foster or support the tourism industry by means of, for example, preserving the natural beauty, can't trump everything else.
So back to what Fawn said, the word thwart. So anytime I think, David, that we have to give an explanation like you did, as lengthy as you did, there's an issue with the reading of it. And the one thing that you promote in your letter is it needs to be written in a style that's understandable to the public. You may not be here in 10 years. And at that point in time, there's not going to be you to decipher what you're trying to say. So it needs to be as clear as it can be now. And I'm struggling with that sentence as well.
Okay, I will accept that you're struggling with the sentence and it needs clarification.
Yes.
But that wasn't Mr. Edfazino's comment. His was that it was negative. He thought he understood it perfectly well and took it as negative. So I was reacting to that.
Okay.
If it's not clear, that's another separate issue.
Let me try a stab at that sentence. To read, as tourism is fostered by the natural beauty of the region, the county will endeavor to preserve that feature where such preservation efforts are consistent with the desire for a diversified economic growth and the rights of property owners.
I like it.
Good.
Gets rid of the negativity.
I like it.
Actually, I would prefer to get rid of the whole sentence because it overemphasizes tourism by its very presence, I think. And I have one other comment, which is on the previous page, the sentence that says the county understands that its economy relies heavily on agriculture, mineral industries, et cetera. We left out timber or forestry, which is not near as big as it used to be, but it may become such.
Yeah.
That's a fair comment.
Or could you just say natural or resource-based industries? And do you have to list them all out specifically?
I think that's the only one we really missed.
Which one?
Forestry.
Okay.
Just forestry, comma, after mineral, comma, forestry, comma. forestry, pardon me, mineral industries is a phrase,
Put it after agriculture.
after agriculture. Okay. You think the emphasis, you think there's too much emphasis on tourism with that sentence?
I do.
Can I offer something on that? Depending on how you organize the various phrases within that, is it emphasizing tourism or is it emphasizing the natural beauty of the county? I thought maybe trying to rearrange that and include Kelly's language. The general plan will endeavor to preserve the natural beauty of the region to foster tourism where consistent with, I didn't write fast enough to get the rest of your language down, but consistent with the diversified economic growth and however you rewrote that, I didn't get that down. But it changes the focus a little bit more, not so much on tourism, but on the natural beauty, which also gets to the point that people may want to locate their businesses here because it's a beautiful place to live, not just for tourism, but for other businesses.
Were you reading from Wooster 1 or Wooster 2?
No, and this is actually
I'm reading from 202
Right, 201.
with Wooster Amendment.
Well, in could you do your amendment to the tourism comment again?
Yes. Let me see if I can incorporate what Peter said.
Okay.
If I heard it right. Is it the county will endeavor to preserve the natural beauty of the region where practical and where such preservation efforts will be consistent with the desire for a diversified economic growth and the rights of property owners.
And that way,
Yeah.
as you say, natural beauty fosters lots of economic, presumably, advantage, not just tourism. In fact, residential growth.
Good.
Yeah, okay.
I want the word
I
technology.
like that.
Do you want to put technology in
I-
there?
I-
Maybe
I
we need a
think
separate
we
statement
need
for
to-
technology.
We need to do a separate statement because I think technology, I mean, he talks 30 years into the future and all of us will be dead probably, but not you, just me. Our future obviously is technology. That's what stops people from coming here on a big scale. So I think we need to say that we're willing to promote the technology growth in our county.
Before we go there, though,
Yes.
can we circle back around, and I think we're close, but I don't know that we all understand where we were just with these revisions.
I think I do. But I would suggest to Lisa that the sentence, "The county desires to allow economic growth and foster it where possible," generally would include the concept of fostering it where possible would be, let's see what we can do to expand wireless communication. Let's see what we can do to promote, I don't know.
And again, the goals and policies will address those
Yeah.
more specific issues of technology or agriculture.
I think we
or forestry.
absolutely have to have that as a bullet point somewhere.
Yeah.
In, I don't know where it would be right now offhand, but because there isn't an economic element.
Could be in land use, it could be in public facilities, utilities, there's
Could be in utilities.
services.
That would make
yeah.
sense.
So, can I
Could
ask?
you, read from the beginning to the end
Right,
of
because
what you
you're
think?
talking about a separate,
I
are you
think it
talking
should
about a
be
separate-
incorporated into economic development
but is a
because
separate guiding principle in
he
economic
can
development?
squeeze it in
No,
anywhere
she
he
was
wants.
Oh,
talking
you're
about
going to squeezing it in?
Squeezing
Okay,
it in
all right.
as a
So,
particular
but maybe,
goal.
because maybe, Peter, do you have the best handle on where we're at here?
Almost. So I think, and Kelly, correct us if I'm wrong, and I'm changing rather than the county, I'm saying the general plan, because again, this is focusing
Good.
back on what the general
Right.
plan is.
Okay.
The general plan will endeavor to preserve the natural beauty of the region where practical, consistent with a diversified economy and the rights of property owners. Is that, you have to be able to write down what it is you've been saying,
I
so.
just used the language that was here because
Consistent with
Consistent.
where
the
such
desire for it.
preservation efforts will not will be consistent with the desire for a diversified economic growth and the rights of property owners. In other words, I left it pretty much the way it was.
Okay.
It could be shortened probably, but
I think that's a clean sentence.
So from start to finish with each,
Let's start over.
yeah.
Why don't you take it, Kelly? You know where you're going.
you mean from the very beginning here?
Well, yeah, can you?
Where it says the county
Here,
intends to promote business
Here,
friendly.
with that change there, that's economic,
Okay,
growth.
let me try. Somebody interrupt me if I
yeah,
get it
I'll
wrong.
be right here with reading along.
Okay, it would start with, the general plan intends to promote an improved business-friendly economic climate for the prosperity of its citizens, for the livability of the county, and to enhance the tax base in order to provide needed services and to put the county on a sound financial footing. End paragraph. The county desires to allow economic growth and foster it where possible. The county understands that its economy relies heavily on agriculture, forestry, mineral industries, recreation and tourism, and desires to support those endeavors where practical.
I would say in paren there too.
The general plan,
Paragraph, yeah.
yeah, new paragraph. The
Paragraph.
general plan will endeavor to preserve the natural beauty of the region where practical, and where such preservation efforts will be consistent with the desire for a diversified economic growth and the rights of property owners. New paragraph. A more diverse economy will result from entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise which the county desires to foster.
Which we considered of just period, not the county desires to foster.
Say again?
Or reverse out, the general plan desires to foster a more diverse economy.
There, something, yes.
Will result from entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise.
That would be fine, too.
Which sentence are you on?
The very
The very
last
last
one.
one.
Just changing the, putting the back to the front. It just reads better.
Okay, I don't,
The general plan desires to foster a more diverse economy.
Instead of a
which
more
will
diverse
result from-
economy.
Yeah,
and then how does the rest of the sentence flow
Yeah.
from that?
yeah.
I think you're going to have a syntax problem.
There is right now.
Well, you could say the general plan desires
will
to
result
foster
from
a more
entrepreneurs being
diverse
happy to
Yeah,
economy,
apply
it just needs a which.
Which will result.
which will result.
Yeah.
Can we say that again? There are too many people talking.
The general plan desires to foster a more diverse economy, which will result from entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise.
Okay. I think we're,
We might have it.
yeah. Any comments? No? Okay.
I would move to adopt the language.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We didn't get technology in there, did we?
No, we didn't. But David said he had a place he could squeeze it in.
I just remembered.
The discussion was that there's going to be that it's an appropriate inclusion into probably the,
Oh, into
The
some of
goals
the
and
elements.
policies.
yeah, into an
Okay, I'm
element
sorry.
that,
That's right, we did cover
I
it.
think it was utilities.
Public
Okay.
facilities and services, or,
Yes.
Where it says the county intends to promote business-friendly, improved economic climate, I guess when you're reading all that, I hang up, and maybe I don't need to. The livability of the county and enhance the tax base in order to provide needed services and to put the county on a sound financial footing. That's kind of a weird principle to me. Does the sound financial footing, is that the right word, verbiage?
Fiscally sound?
Financial
To
footing, I thought
contribute-
was a common enough phrase.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with financial footing.
fiscal
If Rebecca
stability,
Callan was
Fiscal
in here, I think
stability,
she
yeah.
would say, yeah. That's-
provide needed services and fiscal stability.
I think fiscal stability sounds better. Sound financial footing sounds like it, yeah, it doesn't, It does, it sounds.
All right. So how about fiscal stability? I'm fine
I
with that.
like fiscal stability.
Okay. All right, so with that,
How's he going to read this?
Just a second.
oh, okay.
Okay, so instead of a sound finance, to,
Means and tax in order to provide needed services to contribute to the county's financial fiscal stability.
in order to provide needed services and,
Fiscal stability.
And provide.
okay, the verb being
And provide
provide.
fiscal stability.
Yeah, okay, it works good with the verb, provide needed and fiscal stability. That works. That
Sorry.
works.
It was petty, I'm sorry.
Needed services and fiscal stability. And fiscal stability, okay.
Well, however, you can't be stable and still be broke.
Yeah, that's
We are, right now.
I know, but I don't
Well,
want to.
remember, we're trying to improve the economic climate in order to provide fiscal
Yeah,
stability.
we're going to provide it.
Well, okay,
Needed services.
You have to look at the whole sentence.
I think in the context it works, everybody understands what we want, is we want more money.
Can somebody read it, the whole thing from start to finish one last time, and let's get it moved?
Yeah.
The general plan intends to promote an improved, business-friendly economic climate for the prosperity of its citizens, for the livability of the county, and to enhance the tax base in order to provide needed services and fiscal stability. The county desires to allow economic growth and foster it where possible. The county understands that its economy relies heavily on agriculture, forestry, mineral industries, recreation, and tourism, and desires to support those endeavors where practical. The general plan will endeavor to preserve the natural beauty of the region where practical.
What?
No, where practical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The general plan will endeavor to preserve the natural beauty of the region where such preservation efforts will be consistent with the desire for diversified economic growth and the rights of property owners.
Done, I move. Is that okay if I move it?
It's been moved.
And one last sentence.
Right, the last
The
sentence.
general plan desires to foster a more diverse economy, which will result from entrepreneurs being allowed to apply their creativity and expertise.
Is it still moved?
May I offer one word change to Lisa's previous change? Instead of fiscal stability, it's fiscal health. Is that too gooey?
I think stability is a little stronger.
Well, that goes with my thinking that you can be stable and still be broke. But accept it the way it is.
We took a lot of your words, so you need to give something up.
I'm kidding.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to.
We have a motion?
We do.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
I don't even know what it is, but I'll second
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, hey, motion carries. Okay. Next up, community development.
Okay, so I look at the original one, and it's too late. We already have services that have outpaced our infrastructure. David, the county.
I put community development instead of community plans because it's kind of the overall
You
concept.
love the word practical.
I'm a practical kind of guy.
Okay. Commissioner Wooster, did you reference that one of yours?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Right. So I was just reading Commissioner Tuno's.
You know, in as much as the community plans are going to be added, as we have come to understand, maybe you don't even need that, the whole thing, because the base is covered by the fact of their inclusion. But that's up to you guys, whatever you want to do there.
Well, I think it's a good reference over to them.
Okay, I'll buy that.
So I guess let me just throw this out as a starting point with the original guiding principles under community development as developed by the many people in 2008 that was included in the working draft. Or we could have some discussion about those. They're all good to go?
Pointing someplace?
Yes.
On the document that Mr. Facino provided last meeting, it's the bottom part of the first page.
Okay, so the history of the Gold Rush area, I'm okay with. I don't like the communities have clear boundaries and be separated from one another. It's almost an impossibility because we've already done otherwise. We can say we can have distinct centers, but up in my district, that's an impossibility, the way that our town is put together on the highway. If you're going to limit it to that, then it's built out and done, and there's about 10 businesses there, that's it. So there's too much limitation in that for me. I like that through community involvement and volunteerism, residents will be active participants in guiding Calaveras County towards a common vision for the future. I'm good with that. So I would be good with 1 and 4.
The only thing I would say about the last one, just because if the supervisors concur that we have a vision, is that it actually says towards our common vision or the common vision.
Good catch.
I think that the third bullet has some validity. I understand the concern that Lisa has about that, and I just wonder if there's a way that we can wordsmith that a bit. That's a fairly overriding, but common thread throughout the plan, and maybe that's the issue here, is that we are trying to direct growth into the communities so that communities have those kinds of services and support the communities.
It's an impossibility in my community.
But it's not in other communities. And
But I actually would disagree with you.
And I
think that's the whole focus of what do we do with a place like Arnold that is stretched along a highway, and that's not the only community that's this way. Look at San Andreas.
But then the question is, you allow it to keep stretching, or do you want to
There's no land to develop around it available unless it's on the highway direct and requires.
Well, then maybe we need to change some of the land use designation or change some of the
then maybe we need to
policies
seriously look at that.
that have been restricting the type of development that we have there. So.
It's not necessarily that our county is restricting it. PD doesn't help us any at all. It's a negative in my opinion. But the biggest problem that we have is the one center that you're speaking of that would be our community center is off the highway in a circle. But anybody that wants to do anything with an existing building, reopen it, and if it's been closed for 6 months to a year, or they want to develop a new piece of commercial property even directly next to it, they have to put in a left-hand turn lane for Caltrans at the tune of what, $750,000? Development will never take place. So that's not the county causing that restriction, it's the highway.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you. There are constraints that we have that are outside our control.
Correct.
Particularly when the state highway is the main street for the majority of our communities. What I'm trying to say is that we still want to see development occur in Arnold. And I think that's what this is trying to say, is we'd rather see it occur in Arnold. So what do we need to do through the general plan to modify those restrictions, those constraints that we have? Do we need to change land uses? Do we need to get rid of PD? Do we need to, whatever it is out there that is constraining the development within, within Arnold or any community, is a direction of the plan to promote development within the communities.
And I understand that, but when it comes to this statement, what I read into this is, that's one of my issues with the general plan that we're currently trying to clean up, is that we're saying you have to all live here, you have to all build here. So if you own something out here, sorry, but your land's of no value, keep paying your taxes, we're not going to let you build on it. And so I know nobody wants sprawl. In larger towns where sprawl can happen, I understand what you're saying, but in my community, this is severely damaging to us.
Can I be recognized?
Let me try this on you. The general plan promotes development within communities where shopping, medical services, childcare, et cetera, are available.
Well,
They will provide a range of housing types and affordability so people of all come. Those two sentences do not even belong together. They're two separate issues altogether.
I think
Right?
you're probably right there. They are two separate sentences, and each one of these are sort of single sentences. So I guess I'm trying to get to the point.
Well, I guess
that-
we should let other people speak
Yeah.
too, because I pretty much said what I need to say. I don't want to consume the day.
well, I think we need to get a little bit real about this. I mean, you are not going to have medical services and childcare in every community. It's not going to happen. It doesn't happen now. Try Mountain Ranch, Sheep Ranch, Railroad Flat, all kinds of little communities. And you're not going to have a range of housing types and affordability so people of all income level can live in the same community. Saddle Creek, Greenhorn, it's not going to happen. What you're really trying to say here is something about clustering. What you're really trying to say is you want to keep the growth within the existing communities, and that's just not always possible in this county. I mean, it's going to have to sprawl a little bit, I'm
It's already
afraid.
sprawled, so you've got a commercial center here, and then you've got a half a mile of nothing and another commercial center in one stretch.
But it's not just about sprawl, it's about community, character of a community. Some of these concepts just don't fit with every community, which I think was the point that Kelly was making.
Well, I guess I would say that look broader beyond just the individual subdivisions within the community. Copperopolis is a community. It includes a wide range of different housing types within the greater area of Copperopolis. It is somewhat sprawling now, but as infill occurs and other development occurs throughout there, that those services are provided within that community.
Well, actually, it's broken into two parts. There's three parts. There's Old Copperopolis, then there's all the business about 4 miles away towards Lake Tulloch, then there's the stuff around Lake Tulloch, and then there's a copper mill. It's 4 different things, geographically separated. That's what you have. It's a long ways from a distinct community center.
What I'm picking up from Kelly, if I'm right, I agree with it, is that not every, since we're talking about community development, community plans, not every community is going to have all of these different features. If you take the county as a whole, and you're going to have those features, you're going to have some areas that have, let's say, more affordable housing than others. And some areas that have more commercial than others, and et cetera, more, I don't know, industrial jobs than others. But, so you look at it as the county as a whole, but when you try to mirror that concept down to each community plan, it's impractical, it's impossible. I think that maybe is one of these examples of putting too much specificity into a guiding principle concept.
What are your thoughts?
You don't want to hear that.
We do, don't we, Vaughn?
We do. Well, you can save it for now. Let's, Mr. Infacino, you have some light to shed on this?
I hope so. I agree with Lisa and with David that we're actually planning for a diversity of communities, and no one community is going to have all of these components, and some communities are not going to be centralized. So I liked where Peter was going with this. The general plan promotes development in communities that have distinct centers where shopping, medical services, child care, schools, jobs, and infrastructure may be available, not will, are available. Those things may happen in those communities. They might not happen in all the communities, but they may happen. My first suggestion was going to be, before he suggested the general plan language, was to just say many communities will have distinct centers, because many communities, other communities won't have distinct centers. That would be a way of addressing the issue that Lisa's brought up, that it's not every community is going to have a distinct center. Then finally, to address the issue of affordable housing that was raised, the next, and I think it's important to link these two, to say together they will provide a range of housing types affordable so people of all income levels can live in the same community. Because the goal is that countywide we achieve that goal, not necessarily in Saddle Creek or in Arnold.
Through our housing element.
I was trying to avoid saying that, but yeah. Because I know how popular that is with everybody.
Well, it's true.
But yeah.
So under the community development, I think that should be more pushed off into the element of the housing element. I don't know that it's under the community development, it's the right place for it.
Agreed.
Yeah. Just so you know, I don't know if we're going to finish this today or not, but.
We are.
We are.
We are, okay, okay. The
You
reason I
don't
bring this-
need to jump ahead because we are.
No, well, okay, well, the
If you keep your comments short, we are.
yeah. The point I wanted to make was, I made just a comment earlier about principles being available to be included in the individual elements as well. And if you go back to, in June 2008, we produced a general plan public review draft issues and opportunities report, and that listed the specific principles for each of these issue areas that came out of those public workshops. So it might be a useful source as we're working through this and as we move forward into the element.
So you're saying that the working draft reflects those issues, that the comments from the public out of the issues and opportunities report? Is that what you're saying?
Right, what I'm saying is that in addition to the vision statement that the 2008 vision statement, the issues and opportunities report went through a series of topics: community planning and open space, economic development, infrastructure capacity, transportation and mobility. And in each of those sections, it said, when we talked about these issues in the community workshop, these are the principles that people came up with, and it lists them. So just so you know, as a resource, if you're trying to hack through this language, that's available. And also, if you want to put some of these principles in the individual elements, that's a source that you might find useful.
And maybe I'm thinking, oh, go ahead. Anyone else? Because I think, oh.
Tom, can you email that to us?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you like.
I just wanted to comment on that section. Communities will have distinct centers where shopping. That concept has been around, I know, for a long time. I lived in Pleasanton, and we were going through a lot of this. Pleasanton was almost all fully grown out, so some of this made some sense because you would do infill projects. And coming to a rural community, I see this as just terrible to have this happen in a rural community. One of the things about rural communities, you drive around and things aren't all stacked together. And so
Called open space.
yeah, open space, but or just you're driving and there's another building, but it's a
Yeah.
little bit away, not just all put into one location. So that goes to the other piece of when you're developing this community, if that's our goal, and where our goal is to not build around, because that's what they kind of did in the cities, they wanted to keep the rural area open, we should have houses on 5 acres here. That doesn't bother anybody. That's the kind of growth here that we should be looking at, not putting everybody into a box. And I always use Dublin, California as the example of how that happens and what it looks like. And because they did a lot of those structures where the shops are all underneath and the apartments are on the top and you're near the BART. It just, I guess I've always been kind of a person that would like a little bit of space around me, and it just made me sick. And it will, all of you have probably driven by Dublin and how big that has grown, and all those stacks of everything along the freeway. I don't know. So I just would like to see us stay away from that kind of concept of putting everything into one area.
If I may, I just want to address that point. When we started the general plan process, there was a background report done. And one of the things in that background report, this is not the background report from 2014, the previous one. One of the things that included was an inventory of the county's existing parcels. And so it's important to remember why they did that. They did that because we wanted to find out where are we heavy on parcels, where do we have more than we maybe need of a certain kind of parcel, and where are we light on parcels. And so what that inventory showed is that we have, there was no shortage of the 5-acre parcels. And those are legal parcels that can be developed under the general plan. The question for you guys is, what parcels do we want to create in the future? Where are we short? And I think that's the point that Peter was trying to make is as we move into the next phase of development in the county, where will we be making more parcels? And the plan tends to say, well, we want to put more of those where we can service them the most efficiently, and that tends to be in the community centers. So I just want to make it clear.
All right, so what if, I'm losing a few cells here. Okay, so what if we did say that, as Lisa has indicated, that the historic of the Gold Rush era is okay, through community involvement and volunteerism is okay, but if we took Supervisor Tuno's, I'm sorry, I keep getting that wrong. Okay. And we tweak that to include some of these things that are in here. And I haven't got this right, but I'm throwing it out here because I know you guys are really good at this. Okay, so county values its heritage and unique qualities of its individual communities. Community plans as developed by the local residents included in the general plan will help preserve the character of historic communities and foster job and economic growth and community services as reflected in their plan.
Okay.
Something
I'm
that
good
we're,
with that.
okay, that we're throwing it back on to the specificity of the community plans.
I like it.
It should be.
What did you add to what sentence?
I'm on your community development.
Yeah, you,
We were taking this.
you took,
I just added to, I took out all the rest of it. I don't think we need all the rest of it. We're reasonable with each locale, because that's really not needed because it's already in their community plan, what they,
Well, but not everybody has a community plan.
I thought you read the first sentence.
I did. You want me,
and
I'll
then you
read
added
it.
something to it.
I did. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll go at it again. Because what I'm trying to get at is the emphasis on community services and infrastructure as well as business and job growth in community centers, and showing, and it's linking that to the desire on the part of the county. And I think a lot of people in the community that are, for various reasons, including fiscal stability, to direct growth into areas that have infrastructure. So the county values its heritage and unique qualities, and the unique qualities of its individual communities. Community plans as developed by the local residents included in the general plan will help preserve the character of historic communities and foster job and business growth and something like development of community services as reflected in their plan.
I think it's fine.
Peter,
He wants to throw a dart at my head because the general plan is planned to bring everything into a community center, and I went blah, 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 blah.
No.
So now he's having to
It's
rethink
not-
it.
No,
He
what
wants
I'm
throw
trying to do is
darts.
make sure that the principal is looking at the overall picture of the general plan. This statement
Throws it
is
back.
focusing on the community plans, but we need to make sure that the community plans are overall consistent with the general plan. I like the direction it's going, I'm just trying to I'm just trying to think, and a little challenging thinking.
I know, it is. It's more challenging as the day goes on.
Since it's just a principle, Peter, can we loosen it up a little bit so as we work through the general plan, it provides the flexibility we're going to need. Because tightening it up is going to be hard to do, but we need to be able to encompass the general plan with this statement.
I'll tell you what, maybe your problem, Peter, is how about if you took that where the second sentence, if it read the general plan
That's right.
and the individual community plans as developed by the local residents will help preserve the character. In other words, where the community plans don't do it because they're not there, it's, the general plan will have that responsibility.
Yeah?
Is that fair? Does that kind of address the issue that you were having, or were you having a different heading?
No, I think that gets to that.
Okay, you want me to
point.
read it again then? Okay, the second sentence would read, "The general plan and the community plans as developed by the local residents will help preserve the character of historic communities and foster," and then I want you to take it from there because you already had that language.
Something like job and, or job and business growth, or, job and economic growth as reflected in the community plan.
Okay, let me just do it then. And foster, you can kind of wrap that up, economic growth,
Sure.
consistent with each locale, period.
I'm not
So,
sure that last phrase
Peter,
is
what
necessary.
if we went back to the communities will have distinct centers where shopping, medical services, because I know that's where you're struggling, and I know that's a big portion of the general plan, but what if we reworded just in that area and said, community plans, or communities will work through the general plan, not saying will have, but saying we will work towards having district centers.
Distinct centers, yeah.
Excuse me,
all right.
distinct centers where shopping, medical services. But if we change that verbiage, because the way that this reads is what got me fired up, was we will have
Yeah.
these distinct centers. If we changed that verbiage, because I believe that's what you're trying to work for, but the part where the housing types, living in the same community, I think we all do. We
Well,
all have-
and maybe we just need to say, and a range of housing, or something like that, rather than be so specific, including in that sort of list of things that we're looking for in our communities, that a range of housing options would also be in there.
Well, I think that's in every community. It's just you can't get subdivision specific. You have to look
Right.
at the entire
Exactly.
community, and it already exists.
So if we said the general plan supports community plans where distinct centers, shopping, medical services, childcare, schools, jobs, and infrastructure may be available, or something?
I was just thinking more along the lines is the communities will work towards distinct centers, just changing it towards will work towards, not will have.
Well,
That'll
maybe not
work.
all of them do, though. I mean, the community plans are all different.
That's right, and that's why they're so important.
And yes. and-
Yes.
That's why I'm saying we'll just work towards it. You
That's right,
can't
because-
demand that it has it, because that's where I'm hanging up with it.
Because there are some community plans, you're right, that don't want any more growth, and so this would not speak to them.
And that's why I continue to have trouble with this sentence from the CPC version, because it's too much one size fits all. Even if you put it in terms of what we're going to try to promote, even that is too over-inclusive, because we are giving priority to the community plans as included in the general plan, which will mean they'll have to be consistent with it.
Right.
And so if we're going to use what David Tuno did, we got to include that language too, and include it in the general plan, because the community plans are not completely standalone.
No, they're part of, a section of.
I just wanted to remind you that Tom offered the language that could help many communities will have services
Right, that's
may be
true.
available.
That's good.
Just a
Yeah.
couple
Thank you
little
for that
words.
reminder.
Yeah, that opens that up.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, now it's yours, Peter, go with it.
Okay, I'm totally lost now because I was looking at David's version and suddenly we jumped back over to the original language. And so are we trying to merge these two together
Sort of.
somehow?
Well, I thought what we were going to do was we were going to include the first sentence of the CPC draft
Yeah.
Right?
and the last sentence of the CPC draft.
Seems like we've got some consensus there, yes.
And I thought we were going to work with David Tunos, as has been modified, and leave it at that, because there's just too much trouble trying to deal with this third bullet point in the CPC version.
So with David's, if we read it, if we
Many
did what
communities.
what we're saying, 1 and 4, go back to David's, the county values its heritage and the unique qualities of its individual communities. Community plans, as developed by the local residents and included in the general plan, will help preserve the character of historic communities.
Not quite,
No?
because we were allowing for the fact that not every community has a community plan. So it would share the responsibility by doing this. The second sentence would start with the general plan and the community plans as developed by the local
Okay.
residents. And then you go on, will help preserve the character of historic communities and foster economic growth. Put a period right there.
How about we add at the end of that, economic growth, delivery of services, and provision of infrastructure?
Yeah, that's good. 'Cause
Fine.
that
Because I think that's
covers
the
all
key
this.
point, that-
Yes,
That wraps all that up.
that's it.
Now, and
Yeah,
that's one sentence for the entire unit, correct?
for that.
Yeah.
Now, were we adding another bullet point over here, or not?
I think we had consensus on the history of the Gold Rush era will be alive in the culture.
Okay,
And then we had consensus on through community involvement and volunteerism, residents will be active participants.
that was bullet point number...
That's 4. Under community development.
I think that's kind of covered under David's, so that would be kind of a duplicating a lot of the language. So maybe we just take one and we go through what David just read. So the first 3 solid sentences and then adding the general plan. David, where's your notes?
All I can do is read it again.
So you're saying you did to take out the volunteerism?
Do you want me to read what I think
Yes,
this has
you
said?
read it,
Yes.
please.
Okay. So we've got bullet number 1, and then we jump to the county values its heritage and the unique qualities of its individual communities. The general plan and the community plans as developed by the local residents will help preserve the character of historic communities and foster economic growth, delivery of services, and provision of infrastructure.
I like it.
That works.
Ta-da.
Well, you left out the phrase "and included in the general plan."
No, we
Yes, I did.
restructured the sentence that,
Communities.
I don't think it's necessary.
The general plan and community plans. He moved the word in front of community plans. Is that what you meant?
yeah.
I meant him.
Oh,
No, what I was trying to get at was, the community plans will exist at a certain status when the community gets done writing them or gets done writing them. Somebody then is going to have to make sure those are consistent with the rest of the general plan before they get included.
Right.
And so that's why I was hoping to include the phrase "and included in the general plan," which picks up that latter concept.
I'm not getting it.
I think it's self-evident.
I think so too.
Okay.
if it
think
says
so.
the general plan
Because it's not gonna be
and the
included if
community
it's not
plans,
consistent.
I mean, it's,
Yeah. Well, you would not let that
they
happen.
are necessarily have to be,
I would
there
try not.
necessarily
Right.
has to be the Incan
Right.
Okay.
All right, so if we've got the first one and we've got that one, and so, but Lisa, you were saying I mean, I think it's important to show that it's a demonstration of the past as well as the future. It's not that we've done it and there's going to be no more community involvement. I think it's a nice,
I'm good with number 4.
oh, okay.
It's just, it seemed like we were duplicating parts of what we were saying over here, but
But that's sort of, that reflects what happened in the past. This speaks to, in the future as well, that through volunteerism and community spirit. Okay. So the only one left is the distinct, clear boundaries separated from one another by working landscapes. I can understand the problem with green belts. We don't have green belts, or parks. Is there, what?
Well,
In some ways, I think the fact that we have distinct centers, where we've just talked about this the third bullet, the part we just went through in a lot of detail actually does sort of address some of the sentiment of this second one about the clear boundaries.
Considering that second one.
why
Greenbelt
can't we
Park.
just stop with what we got?
Well, that's been, you can make that proposal.
You know
So-
what? I do.
Okay.
I propose that we adopt a community development
Guiding principles.
principle as just read by Mr. Mauer. If it needs to be reread, so be it, but I think we all heard it from one end to the other.
Okay, so that includes the first bullet on the CPC,
The Gold Rush era.
Gold Rush era.
Yeah, I think that was a consensus to include
Yeah.
that bullet. In fact, that would be probably the logical starting point.
The county heritage statement that we talked about from
Heritage.
your version would be the second bullet, and then what about the last bullet? Was
Yes,
that
about
one-
community service and volunteerism.
Okay, so we are keeping that one after all.
So, but before we actually go to the motion, because you've thrown that.
I'll withdraw the motion if you would.
Okay, but just to
Focus
have
on-
some discussion from the public about their feelings about not addressing that one in the guiding principles.
I'm good, except for in that list of, after and foster economic growth, delivery of services, and provision of infrastructure, if somewhere in that string we could add a range of housing types, because that would capture that last sentence that we left out. So if it said, and foster economic growth, a range of housing types, delivery of services, and provision of infrastructure.
I think that's covered in the housing element.
We've got a massive housing element.
Yeah, so you don't want to reflect that in the vision?
I don't.
Okay.
Tom reminded us a few minutes ago that what we have is what we have. I'm not quite sure how he said it, but we're looking to the future to see, like we did an inventory on what lots were available, what parcels, but we're looking to the future to see, do we want to add any more individual lots? And if so, where, that sort of thing. But I think it's important that we remember that that wherever we build, they're going to want infrastructure. And if it's 10 miles down the road, that means infrastructure, that means roads, water lines, phone, internet, all this stuff, providing to that. Now, who's going to pay for that? All the taxpayers will end up paying, as I understand, for that. So we hear people say all the time, I don't want to pay for that, sure as you pay for it. Well, that's, I think, I would say that we might want to encourage, not say that individual communities will have distinct centers where all this is may be provided, but we could encourage it in the future.
So,
Because we all know that we can't afford to maintain the roads that we have or the plumbing, shall we say, the water lines that we have, let alone build more.
if
So-
somebody's building 10 miles off the beaten path like you're speaking to, it's
Well,
probably
that
not
was
going to be a
just a-
county-maintained road anyway, so it's going to fall upon that person that decides to develop there.
Well, I just meant like way down the highway, where there may not be facilities yet. If we already have a development already planned there, then maybe yes, but
So
I
I
just
got
think we
mine, you
need to
can't have
remember.
hers, even though you've paid taxes all those years. That's the part that I just don't understand.
I just think we need to remember there's a cost associated with everything that we do.
There is.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right,
They're
thank
all
you.
ready.
But those people are paying taxes that are supporting our infrastructure now on their land. You've gladly taken their money to support where you live, but now you're telling them they can't build. So it's got a compounded effect that you need to look long-term and long-range on. Go ahead, Colleen, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm just not sure where we're at. I'm still on bullet number 3, trying to kind of work that back into the discussion, because that is sort of the basis of our general plan focus, I thought, was to have as much as possible community centers in the future because of cost of services provided, et cetera, et cetera. So if there was a way we could, tweak that wording like we were talking about and saying many communities will have distinct centers, or we will, encourage communities as they would like to have distinct centers where these services may be available. I mean, that is kind of the point of what we're trying to be, efficient and practical with what resources we have in the county. And yes, we're not all going to be that way. Sheep ranches scattered out, ranchos scattered out. But in the future, where we've got the services, I think people all agreed, most of us agreed that we wanted distinct centers where shopping and services would be available if possible. So I don't know, I hate to see that let go. And the range of housing types, I know that's, some people look on that as a pie in the sky, but that's something that countywide we are attempting to provide people a range of housing types. We've had people now for 10 years email our organization or write our organization, say, we need senior housing in the area. We don't have anything. And we've been trying to encourage it if we could have that range of housing types just in there as a vision to work for our goal, and then we could incorporate where it's practical and appropriate, incorporate those things. Our community centers could do that. They've got the water, the sewer, the power, the roads, so I think we should encourage that where it's appropriate. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think we've not maybe as directly address the distinct centers, but with the integration of Commissioner Tuno's, sorry.
I'm not offended.
I know.
I've been called everything. Come on.
I'm going to call you David, I'm calling her
That's
Lisa.
fine.
Right?
Yeah.
Don't call me
And
David.
with the working draft version, I think we're really kind of getting at the distinct centers, especially with the addition of the reference to the services and to the infrastructure.
And I would add to what
Yeah.
what you're saying, Fawn, is that I don't see what the point of having community plans at all if you've got a couple bullet points that tells them all what's supposed to be in there. A community center, all kinds of housing, bunch of shopping and amenities or whatever. The community plans are what they are, depending on how those committees and those people got together on it. So as long as it's overall consistent and Mr. Maurer's viewpoint with the general plan, I'm sure he's going to be as liberal as he can be when it comes to that. It's done. And this is directing them as to what would be in the community plans, and our position was don't do that. Let them have their say.
Well, and again, I think with the integration between the two, I think we are accomplishing a general guideline that says that's where development is going to occur.
She made a legitimate statement, though. Can you just read that last section that you tacked on so that she can hear it again? You said you didn't get all that verbiage, is that right?
I didn't feel that community centers and infrastructure were tied together.
They are, I think. Maybe not as tightly as could be, but maybe as tightly as we're going to get.
The county values its heritage and the unique qualities of its individual communities. The general plan and the community plans as developed by the local residents will help preserve the character of the historic communities and foster economic growth, delivery of services, and provision of infrastructure.
What's your pleasure?
Okay, if you're ready for...
Unless there's further discussion, I think we're...
I'm talked out.
Okay. So you would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the community development portion. Do I need to be more specific than that, other than to say as read by Mr. Mauer?
Do we-
As compiled by Mr.
Do
Mauer
we
from...
need to read them all one more time?
I
Annette?
don't think so.
He's
No?
I think we have it, the
as compiled from
Okay.
the three sources.
bullets 1 and 4 and the revised language of Mr. Tuna's.
Yes.
Okay, that's the motion.
There's a motion? Is there a
I'll
second?
second it.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
I didn't know David because she talked out.
Well, we're still, there's still more to go.
We're not through yet.
We still have noise.
Making fun of me?
We still have
I'm making
objectives.
fun of you, and I'm
Because
sorry.
sometimes I can't tell.
Infrastructure and services.
There's that word
And-
infrastructure again. Okay. What did you
And in
put?
this one, we've got a couple from Commissioner Wooster and several from the Planning Coalition and another from Commissioner Tuno.
Actually, I think mine is mostly a Worcester.
Okay, very close.
Yes, I think it might be entirely him. So I'll take a back seat on this one. It's-
Well, yes, he did kind of crib from what I did. Two main points, which is we've got to keep our roads and highways up, because that's how people get around. And secondly, if there's going to be new development, they have to pay the cost of providing the additional infrastructure and services. Roads, water, sewage, schools, police, and fire. Pretty much that simple.
So let me ask you this. Let's go back, because I think we might want to just like talk about some of the working draft and planning coalition, because there are, and let's just, I'm looking for the commonalities here. So new development will pay the cost of providing adequate additional infrastructure and services necessitated by it, including roads, water, sewage, and public services such as school, police, fire, without degrading the infrastructure and services available to residents. Okay. So that's very similar to development will not outpace the ability of county government to provide adequate services and infrastructure or reduce the level of service provided to existing communities. Basically, they're kind of saying the same thing.
Well,
Right?
what Mr. Tuno did was even simpler than what I did. Be the second paragraph of his infrastructure and services.
Which is, new development will pay the cost of providing adequate additional infrastructure and services necessitated by it, including roads, water, sewage, and services such as schools, police, and fire.
His is both shorter and more comprehensive than mine.
I think all three of them say the same thing
They
on
do,
that
so
first
it's
bullet
really
point.
kind of,
I think if you're going to go with that, Mr. Tunos, and I would add something about not reducing the level of service to existing. That's in both.
Well, if you look at number one of the infrastructure and services under the planning coalitions, it basically says exactly what you're saying.
Right, right.
So if you just took,
Wait a second.
and what David says and that one says are almost identical.
right.
Yeah.
So if we're all saying the same thing, maybe we can just go with this one that does have the reduce the level of
Right.
service. The other thing I was no, it was Kelly's, is it's residents, and it's not just residents, because there's, businesses, communities. So I think communities is probably a better
Agreed.
word. So is there some consensus just to kind of stick with the planning coalition
No,
version?
just number one.
That's what I'm saying,
Oh, okay.
just number one.
Okay,
I'm ticking our way down the list.
perfect.
Okay. Is that, okay. All right,
I'm sorry, but you talk about bullet point number 1 under
Yes.
infrastructure in the
Yes.
CPC revised version.
yes.
Okay. This is kind of a chicken and the egg thing, if you will, because when a development is proposed, the county will say, okay, to have that development, you need to build this road to a certain standard, and then the CCWD, let's say, will say, you're going to have to put in an 8-inch line from here to here, and whatever else the county might say, we want you to plant a bunch of trees to block the sound from your thing to the next guy, or whatever the requirements are. Okay, that's all infrastructure requirements that are placed on the demands that are placed on whoever's got this project. So it's really not development outpacing the ability of the county government to provide the adequate services, because they're not providing them. The developer's doing it. He's paying for it. So if you take this sentence literally, a developer would not be allowed if the infrastructure isn't in place right now, or if the county says we're not ready to build that right now. You follow me?
Not quite.
I see the frown on your face.
No,
Okay.
It's not a frown, it's more of a question mark.
The county doesn't go out and decide, you know what, down the road a few years, there might be something, development on that hillside. So let's build a road, and let's put in some sewer, and let's, put in street lighting or whatever to that point in time. We don't do that, thank God, we'd go broke. So it's not the county it's not development that follows the county's infrastructure development, it's the other way around. Development happens, we put demands on the developer to improve the infrastructure in order for them to have what they want.
Okay, so if I understand what he's saying, if you wanted to take, just to make it simple, where were you, Peter? You read it. New development will pay the cost of providing adequate additional infrastructure and services necessitated by development.
Right.
Including by development. Let's write that road in there because by it don't work for me. Okay, including roads, water, sewages, and service such as police, school, and fire. And then go over to the Planning Coalition's comments, and you could add or reduce the level of service provided to existing communities. Just tack it on to the end. Would that work, Peter, for you?
Without reducing the level of service provided to existing communities?
I mean, if we, obviously, water is one of our biggest issues.
I would say the reduction factor goes up front so as not to reduce the existing the level of services. New development will pay the cost of going forward. Does that?
I think level of services provided to existing communities is an important statement in the fact that, David, we have a water issue. And if somebody wants to put a subdivision in next to another subdivision, and that other subdivision is going to be severely affected by the fact we can't deliver the water, that's an issue. So it has to be taken into consideration.
Of course, and that's why I mentioned, for example, let's say a small subdivision next to one that's already existing, and the line is only 2 inches now. CCWD would say that, not us, not the county, but CCWD would say you need to double the size of that line because it's inadequate to serve both neighborhoods' needs.
I hope doubling a line is going to be adequate.
Well, that's somebody else's mathematics, arithmetic problem. But my point is that this bullet point here flips the problem on its ear. This is not the way this is not the sequence of events.
But you're reading the whole thing, and all we're doing is taking from reduce the level of services provided.
I understand that, Peter, you make a good point that you don't want to reduce the level of service provided to existing communities. So in order to not reduce this level of service provided to existing communities, new development will pay its own way.
But you've said that over here in your comments that we're picking up.
But I think what he's saying is if it pays its own way, it's not going to reduce. By
That's
default,
right.
it won't reduce.
Peter wants to make sure that we don't nobody else suffers from something else new coming in. Fair enough. In order for that not to happen, the new guy has to pay his way, whatever the upgrade is needed for that particular area. Now, Lisa, you made a point earlier that a property owner, the owner of a piece of property that's been sitting vacant for God knows how long, has been paying taxes on it.
Yeah, they have.
So that's been going, and he's not getting much out of the deal, right? Because
He's helping pay for our
he's
infrastructure.
helping pay for something else. But, and I don't know, in terms of the fee, now we're talking fee structure, how the fee structure relates to that particular point, because if that's a valid point. It's not necessarily a valid point here, because fee structure goes all sorts of ways. It goes to the RIM fees, it goes to CCWD hookup fees, and whatnot.
But they're paying for infrastructure at the point they decide to develop, and as they sell those homes, those tax dollars come in that covers their infrastructure costs.
They're paying, I don't know what portion of property taxes goes to infrastructure, I don't know. But I do know that when you want to build a house, now you've got a RIM fee, and that's a big spike. And CCWG is going to charge you a big bunch of money to hook up to their system. And if it's sewer, it's even more.
Okay. Well, you know what? We're working on the principles right now. We're getting off track.
I agree. That's a level of detail.
I think whether, you put the, not reducing level of service first, or you put it at the end, doesn't really matter. Either way works for me.
What do you think the correct verbiage is based on Peter's argument?
How about
David's?
Well, I think it is important to have the level of service, even though you're saying by default it's sort of implied, but I think it's important to have it in there.
I do too.
I think we've all agreed that.
Bullet it into there.
Oh, all right.
Have the sentence structure.
Oh, all right, so
The
here,
beginning of the sentence or the end of the sentence?
it could be, new development will pay the cost of providing adequate additional infrastructure and services necessitated by the development, including roads, water, I'd say wastewater, and services such as schools, police, and fire, nor will it reduce the level of service enjoyed by existing users.
No, nor is not the right conjunction. It would be so as, not to.
Okay, that works, so as not,
Without?
or
reducing?
without reducing
Okay.
the level of service enjoyed by existing users.
Right.
And that way, it's like, it's not businesses, it's not residents, it's just people, whoever are impacted by that particular development.
It doesn't address Lisa's problem, but this is not the place to address it anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
But I agree that it needs to be, that's on the table somewhere with various entities that charge people for doing things.
So,
Provided to existing users? Is that
or,
the-
yeah, that's the only thing, I mean, it could be that, I'm open to suggestion.
We had the word just a minute ago.
I said users.
With communities initially?
I think it was communities initially.
We could do communities.
Well,
Yeah, communities, communities are good.
what about residents?
It's not just residents, because you could be a
A
business too.
community could be everything, schools, parks, homes, it could be everything.
Yeah, so let's go with communities.
What sentence are you twisting?
Oh, it's the part of without reducing the level of
Oh.
service enjoyed by existing communities, instead of users.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's existing
Okay.
community, it works
Right.
fine.
Okay. All right, so we have that one.
So does the audience hate it?
Is there any, are you guys good with that? Okay, good.
Yay!
All right, so next is highways and streets will be well-maintained and well-connected. Public transit, bike, aviation, and pedestrian facilities will provide choices for travel within communities and to major destinations. Kelly, shaking his head.
Well, I guess I'm not too sure about well-connected, number one. Number two, are we really going to have bike transportation to major destinations like Sonora or Jackson or Stockton or whatever? Are we going to have pedestrian facilities to do the same thing? We're going to walk to Stockton? It seems to me that in this county, most of the travel is going to be by vehicle. It has to be. Now, you will get your recreational bicyclists, but I don't think that the rest of the community needs to be bending over backwards to put bike lanes on every county road
To every major destination.
into every major destination. I think it ought to be focused on keeping our roads and our highways up so we can drive on them.
And I think that some of the community plans address their pedestrian and bike lanes, and if that's what they want and they can find their own monies to do it with, I think that's great.
What about putting something as far as more general, as far as options, travel options or something like that in there? I think it's important that we don't rely solely on the automobile, mainly because we're getting mandated from the state to look at other options. But without being specific, which would imply that, you can ride your bike from Sheep Ranch to Copperopolis.
In my area, we can cross-country ski, can we add that?
Well, that would be under other options.
Right?
That there are, and I'm not sure the language off the top of my head, but somehow we have a more general reference to other travel options and opportunities or something.
And I would also say
Because we
that,
do have a bus system we're trying to integrate. We do want to try to promote walking within the communities. Where we have an ability to have a bike lane, let's put it in, but I'm sure we're not going to put bike lanes to connect every community.
safe routes to school, big emphasis on safe routes to school. In my community, lots of bike riding, lots of people walking around. I don't think that we can, just because it's the major mode of transportation, that it's the only mode. I think we need to be accommodating, and maybe it is just saying other modes, to accommodate other modes, because there are a lot of people that don't have cars, too.
Well, I think it's a different issue when you're talking about within communities where bicycling and walking is feasible. When you're talking about people going from Aldeville, to San Andres on Highway 49 on a bike, in my opinion, they shouldn't be allowed to do it. It is a big safety hazard, okay?
I have a
But
suggestion to address
if they
that.
are going to do it, it's their recreational choice. It's not an infrastructure service that the county must provide them.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
Okay. I think the region, the major destinations is in there, was to account for the aviation. And so if we can separate this out, so it says, highways, streets will be maintained and well-connected. Public transit, bike, and pedestrian facilities will provide choices for travel within communities, and aviation to major destinations. That way, we're not saying that we're going to provide pedestrian facilities and transit and bike to major destinations.
Where do we have aviation to major destinations?
Because we have a section in the general plan about aviation. And
But
so,
it's not to major destinations, right?
No, I don't think you
well,
could.
it can be. I mean, it depends on, if you have a private plane, and you leave the airport, you can go pretty much anywhere you want.
Yeah, the original language didn't include aviation.
Right.
And I think that major destinations was intended to apply for travel choices. So you could take a bus if you needed to get to
Okay, so you want-
Stockton for school or Columbia College or something like that, or between communities.
So I just think if we could separate maybe the public transit and the aviation to the major destinations and the
I don't-
bike and pedestrian facilities to within communities, we would address most of Commissioner Wooster's concerns.
I don't know that aviation needs to be in there, frankly.
Yeah,
If you want-
and it's a stretch.
It's a small part of the general plan. It's just
Yeah,
drop
and
in.
I would feel comfortable at not talking about the
So, and public transit to major destinations, or just leave Mr.
the
You don't
aviation
have a helicopter?
Or just
business.
leave major
No,
destinations off?
I don't have a plane, I don't have a helicopter.
Or just leave major destinations off completely then?
I'm not sure yet.
Maybe a
I'm
period
not sure
after.
where we're at either.
They'd have a lot to say about that.
Because if it was a period within communities, we wouldn't have this debate about major destinations.
Correct.
We, what would be you would join public transportation to the major destination concept. Okay, so the public transportation would apply to the desire to get people to major destinations without having to drive a car. All right? That's where you're headed with that, and that's
Right, we have
Okay.
public transit to Stockton, we have public transit to Jackson if people get to Rayleigh's.
Right,
That's the kind of thing.
okay. So the wording
We have,
would,
they're working off of this one.
you're working off of this list here,
No, not this one. Where's the coalition's updated one?
the updated one? Yeah.
Right here. He's working off of right here. Highways and transportation. Connected. And we're aircraft and aviation.
That reads well to me, just.
And well-connected.
Highways and streets will be well-maintained and well-connected. Leave out, public transit, bike and pedestrian facilities will provide choices for travel within communities, period.
What does well-connected mean in this context?
Yeah.
Anything?
You only have only one route to get from here to here.
So, and major destinations has to come
We need
on.
to know there.
The ability to get from one place to another.
How are we going to well maintain
A good
these
example,
streets?
for David, if you review the community plans, both of them from Valley Springs, the Toffanelli plan and the COG plan, they talk about the kind of transportation, the kind of road system they want in the future. And both of them say, what we'd really like to do is build on the grid system that we already have in Valley Springs so that the system will be well connected. So that's an example of a well-connected system. What they're trying to avoid.
That's really a design issue. So that's not, connection is not the point so much as design. Well-maintained and designed. Agreed?
Well, no,
think so?
it's about connection. It's about, you don't want to be in situations where, and I'm not saying this happens in this county, but in other counties it happens, where you have one road in and one road out of a subdivision, and if a kid wants to ride his bicycle or walk, or you want to drive, you have to drive all around the subdivision to get out and all around the subdivision to get in. And so
On purpose, yeah.
sometimes it's designed that way on purpose, but
Sure.
what they're trying to encourage, at least in the Valley Springs area, was to maintain the connectivity they have through their existing grid system. So that was one example of connectivity. And I'm sure Peter can give others, I'm just trying to.
Okay, so we got a bullet point that starts with highway, by the way, what are we calling this bullet point? This is infrastructure, this is still infrastructure?
Yeah.
Okay. Highways and streets will be well-maintained and designed. Public transit will be designed to facilitate transportation between destinations, between major destinations. Bike and pedestrian facilities will, community plans will address bike and pedestrian facilities, something to that effect? You got to split it up that way?
You know, I think we're getting lost in the weeds here.
Can
along the shoulder of the road.
I just want to offer something before, and then I might be in the weeds too. But let me be in the weeds, and then you can get us out. So if we took Kelly's and did some tweaking, so how's this? The county is primarily rural, and most residents and businesses travel by vehicle to work, schools, stores, and elsewhere. Highways, roads, and streets will be well-maintained and well-connected, and maybe you add the design. And then you add, public transit, bicycle, and pedestrian facilities provide alternative modes of travel within and between communities, period.
The in-between bothers me.
Okay, all right, so get rid of the in-between.
Yep. And then, so just a quick question on the highways portion of this. How can we state that they'll be well-maintained? It's not a county road. Should we be adding that, or should we just say the county
No.
streets will be well-maintained?
Actually, you need the word roads, because most of the roads in this county that the county is responsible for are roads. They're not highways and they're not
But we're
streets.
Actually,
specifically,
technically, any public road is considered a highway.
so is the use of that word proper being that we know the state maintains those roads, not us? Are we putting anything on ourselves we don't want to take on?
I don't think that statement implies that we will be maintaining a state highway.
Says it'll be well-maintained.
If we're going to be using plain English, I think we ought to use the word roads. That's how people think of them.
So use roads instead of highways.
County road departments, how it used to be called.
Unless we have the right to tell the
There's
state
a,
what.
there's a
to do.
distinction,
That'd
there's
be
a
amazing.
technical distinction between a road and a highway.
So
The state has control over highways and we have the roads.
how was my proposal? You
Your
guys just-
proposal was amazing.
Oh.
I just had a question about the highways. He didn't like the in-between. You separated that out, and I thought it was great. Good job.
Okay, thank you. Comments?
I appreciate that as well, but I also want to say that when we talk about alternate modes of transportation, I think we have to also remember that it's been said here not everyone owns a car. Not everyone can afford to own a car. Not everyone has a license or can have a license anymore. Once you get to a certain age, many times, your license is no longer an option. But you still need to be connected to your community. So within your communities, as we plan for developments, we need to make sure that Uncle Henry and Aunt Lulu can leave their home on their scooter and go to the drugstore, or if we ever get a movie theater or something, they can go to their own community when they want to, under their own power, their scooter, whatever, instead of waiting for someone from the volunteer center to come and pick them up every 6 weeks or something to go to the doctor. They can do their own thing and they can stay connected with their community. That is 1/3 of our population, our seniors, and many of them are more and more becoming less more and more of them are, there's an increasing number of them that no longer use the roads and highways. But they still need to be connected to the community. Then there's all our kids. And we have an epidemic of obesity in our children, and that leads to many diseases, many chronic diseases. We've got to get them moving. So having these connectable, walkable communities is critical to the health of our communities. So thank you for keeping that in there.
I think there is a countywide master bicycle plan at someplace. I know that community used to be pretty active, and I think that exists. I hope you would consider putting back in the in-between communities for at least a placeholder for bicycle paths. I think that can set you up for grants. It may even set you up for certain standards in Caltrans to accommodate that. I think the Highway 4 corridor is a great example of where the lack of that, I think, inhibits tourism and actually a marketing effort of several years ago that seemed to advertise that this is a bicycle-friendly area. You can move between communities and within communities. Even now, you have Angels Camp, I think, struggling in a way to make good on some of their promises, where people could get around on a bicycle. So I would say if it doesn't hurt, I think it's good to mention that planning for bicycle travel between communities is an important thing to include. Thank you.
Thank you. More discussion?
Well, I just can't agree with that last comment.
either.
I
Okay.
mean, you cannot, most of our county roads are narrow. You just can't widen them, okay, practically, to accommodate bicycles. The same thing's true with our state highways. It would be a monumental job for a very few recreational people.
Okay.
And the CEQA analysis would be a nightmare.
Could I just say, you don't always have to retrofit. In fact, I think the bicycle organization made the point 3 or 4 years ago. Between Murphy's and Angels Camp, you don't have to do a costly addition to the roadway. You simply have to, and there was just a technical adjustment in how they lay down the asphalt as it goes into a shoulder. And
I would welcome the Bicycle Association to bring the money forward, and we'd be happy to put a lane in for them. We don't have the money to do that.
When they were here a few years ago, they were essentially saying that would be ideal, but it's not necessary.
It would be ideal.
And you can give us a little more room by doing this, which is simply a technique or a procedure when the road gets resurfaced. So,
We just did a bike lane in Arnold that went from Pine Drive to Oak Circle.
Right.
It's a matter of a half a mile. Your county just spent $600,000 between grants and county dollars. Half a mile.
Yeah, again, I'm not.
So,
saying-
don't talk to me about bike
No,
lanes right now.
I'm not, well, that's, but I don't think that example, that's not what I'm saying.
But
I'm
that's the cost of doing this, and I think that if we can keep within our communities, like right now, in where our elementary school is, going out, bike lanes are in. Those children can go from the school down the street. And I think that the communities need to take responsibility in stepping up, and everyone's got community plans. I know that we did, that has these bike paths to get to and from. So, but connecting communities, if you just look at the stretch between Dorrington and Arnold, you're going to get wiped out by a logging truck before you can blink your eyes. When you go around a corner and there's a bicycle there, you pray as a driver you don't hit them.
Yeah, if you just say this is something worth doing at some point, I think you.
I agree. It's a great thing if we could do it. We just don't have the funds. We need to get above water from where we are right now before we can do something like that. I think we need to be taking care of.
I think what he's asking for is like a
communities.
placeholder, and understanding that it's not going to happen, but if we just had in the guiding principle, the between and the within.
So we're adding club.
Well, I think that the idea here is that we look at intermodal, transportation options. Nothing requires us to suddenly build bike lanes or walkways or anything anywhere. That's something that would come later on, but that we reserve the ability to try to promote other means of transportation, getting around, where it's feasible.
I don't like including options I don't think are real.
Well, let's,
A better place for it, since everybody's in agreement, this is pretty far out there, and it's kind of a dream factor. Why put it into guiding principle? Why not stick it in circulation element? That as a goal, the county will keep, look at the possibility of,
I'd love for it to be a goal. That's
Well, there are goals, and the goals and policies and implementation programs that specifically address those.
is this one thing big enough to make it into the guiding principles? I don't think so.
I think for some people, the bicycles are big enough for them to want it to be there. Is it realistic and is it dangerous? I think it's very dangerous in our rural roads. We're not in the city. We don't have a city structure. We're very rural. I mean, I would love to give them all of that. But I don't think it's
live
feasible.
on Hartfixon. Hartfixon is the tour to Calaveras County. There's 1,000 bike riders in the summer on any one weekend when they have their big events, all day long. They're going up there. You cannot get in and out of your house.
That's money coming to the county.
Yeah, I suppose they buy bottles of water at the gas station, but they're not even county residents.
But they do more than that. They're spending their money here. They drove here in their car, they're gonna fill up their car. I support that wholly, I do.
Stay in a motel, eat at a restaurant.
That's right, it goes on and on and on and on.
Come back,
Come
come
back.
back,
So
come back.
I guess,
Burrito from the Shell station.
my original suggestion was that we look at alternative modes of transportation in a very general sense, that we do want to promote that. And I think it does belong in the guiding principles. To be specific about pedestrians and bicyclists and how we get there, that is something that gets down into the nitty-gritty of the circulation element itself.
So can you read to us how you would want it to read?
A general statement that says
Let him read
we
it, he
intend to
wrote
look at.
it.
Highways and streets will be well-maintained and well-connected, and other modes of transportation will be promoted. Or maybe not promoted is not the right word, but will be provided or will be,
I like promoted, I mean, what's good, we can
yeah, we're
promote
going
it.
to promote it.
I mean,
Maybe
that's
promote's the
good.
best one.
And we can't provide it.
No,
Yeah.
you can't promote it if you can't provide it.
Well, you
Well-
can promote it because you don't know what's gonna
Will
come.
be
We can get a
supported?
developer to provide it, someone with a new,
Supported?
Explored.
encouraged.
I think,
Could I just say, we are very different, our county, geographically,
Oh,
okay?
yes.
So your areas are way different than our
Yes.
areas. So what's totally infeasible in your area might not be so in the flatter areas
that's
of the
why you guys
county.
have community plans.
We don't.
Oh, you
All
don't
of
either.
us.
Good.
We don't all of
We
us,
don't either.
okay? We don't have anyone right now. So I'm just saying, down in our area, I live in Rancho, it's It's 5 miles from Valley Springs. When I first moved there with my husband, we both had bikes, and we had such good intentions. You know, it's not that far to go
So
into
I
town.
guess where I struggle with this, Colleen, and you can just bear with me for a second,
Yeah.
is that we do live in a very diverse county. Every area is unique. But we also chose to live in the rural area that we chose. When I moved to Dorrington 30 years ago, I bought my house knowing logging trucks were going to run up and down Boards Crossing every single day with Jake brakes. Okay, I accept that. When you bought in Valley Springs, you knew there was no access on a bicycle
I
getting
know,
to Valley
but we
Springs.
have our
Promoting
roads
it
that we can
and
ride on our
asking for
roads.
it and trying to make it happen is great, but I think putting any demand on us and then
No, not a
having the
demand.
people say, well,
Right.
we want it, then let's find an avenue to make it happen, but not put it on this county that can't afford to put it in right now, because we all moved here knowing what we bought into.
I'm not saying a demand, I'm just saying to encourage, because people like to ride bikes, they want to
I
ride
agree.
bikes. We did
And it
ride
saves
bikes,
money.
let me finish. We did ride bikes in our little community, and we tried to ride to Valley Springs, because as you know, the road is too dangerous in some places.
Yeah.
But over the years, the road gets improved, the road gets widened, the road gets straightened. New businesses get put in. They're required to put in a frontage that's up to design standards of the county. All of a sudden, now you have a wider road. You have a place that's safe to ride. If we just put that as encourage that sort of thing as the county develops, as roads are widened and straightened and improved.
I
Just-
just don't think it rises to the level of a guiding principle for the county. I think it's a detail that you stick in that, we mentioned the element, would be the circulation element, or even the safety element, because it has to do with safety, travel, whatever, but certainly circulation. It just doesn't rise past that level.
It may not. The only thing that I will speak to this in the positive, because I agree with you on that, it doesn't rise to the level, but we are dealing with our general plan that's going to be submitted to the state, and the state is
No,
going to...
it won't.
No?
No, it's just
Where's
ours.
the housing element?
Oh, well, then forget it. You should have never told me that.
I do think other modes
What
of
we want is
transportation.
the best as we
I
possibly
think the
can.
way that you read
And
it...
there are
I
certain
think
requirements that we
other
need to
modes of-
meet state law.
Other modes of transportation will be encouraged, promoted,
I-
whatever. I think
like
that is important.
I'm okay with that.
I don't understand why the county has to be in the business of encouraging any particular mode of transportation, whether it's walking, bicycling, riding horseback, or a skateboard. People make their own choices on this thing. Why are we saying we're going to encourage alternate forms of transportation?
One of the things it does, Kelly, for people that don't have cars, if we are encouraging new subdivision, new developers, whatever, that if we have a policy in here saying, hey, we're encouraging you to provide other modes of transportation, we're encouraging you to link the county, you know, the transit system, so there's if you put a bus stop out in front of here, because it enhances the quality of life for people who live here, and that's a very important factor.
Can I
Well,
also
that's
share?
fine insofar as you're talking about providing infrastructure where you can. But what I just heard was we're going to encourage alternative modes of transportation.
How about if we say we're going to encourage people not to buy a house that doesn't serve their needs because it's too damn far from where they need to be, and they don't have a car? I mean, we might as well be in that business.
Uh-oh, I think
of
we need
telling
a break
people
pretty soon.
where to live.
You know what, Peter, I'm sorry. Can you just read what you said one more time so that maybe we can all clear our heads on that?
Roads and streets will be, roads and streets will be well-maintained and well-connected, and other modes of transportation will be encouraged.
So can I just remind
State law
us
does require us that we
that-
look at other
Yes.
modes of transportation.
Yes.
Looked at.
We just looked at it.
Include in our general plan.
No, looked at. If that's what we're planning to do, then that's the language.
That was not the correct term of our,
Well, I'll look at something, but encourage takes on a whole
that
different
work?
meaning.
It does for me, but
Investigate it.
we've got 3 other men here to...
Consider.
I know. So does that work for what Peter just read?
Does for me.
Okay,
So shall I help encourage you guys? Okay, so,
Hey, all I want to do is change one word. Everything he said except for one word.
what's the one word?
Change encouraged to, let's see.
Tolerated.
All of
Not,
that,
considered.
that sounds terrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I
it
just
does.
remind
Terrible
us,
is encouraged.
What?
I'd
So
just
you
like to
guys have
remind
think
us
like
that
this. Think
the
big,
county doesn't
okay?
have to pay for everything. We have partners.
Yes, we
Caltrans
we
has
understand that,
programs.
yes.
I know, but they keep talking like.
But everything's
Oh,
matched.
they have to-
Everything comes out of our pocket. No matter what you do,
I know.
everything gets matched.
So,
Besides,
I
it's our
know.
money anyway.
all right, so I have
I
a,
have a way to convince them.
oh, okay.
Because they are
This'll
both,
be good.
they are both all about taking care of our county, funding our county, making sure that we are sustaining ourselves. So think of it like this. Bicycles can promote local people, but also it is promoting the tourism that's coming to our county and helping spend some tax dollars here. So in that aspect, we should be, there are big bike tours that bring big money to little towns. So
They exist somewhere on the planet, I agree.
no, they exist everywhere,
Okay.
on your street.
Oh, look,
You
I can
said
solve that problem.
thousands.
If what you want to do is talk about bringing in money from bike tours, that's an economic development plan, and we can have a tour to Calaveras County.
We should.
Okay?
I'm trying to
That
get 'em
has nothing
around.
to do with this little
So-
infrastructure issue that we're talking about right now. Because those people don't ride on bike paths.
So I
They
have,
ride
we
right down the
have,
middle of
Let's
the
make a
road.
motion.
there
so
you
that we
go.
can get a second
Is there a
vote.
motion to?
It's okay not to be
That's
5-0.
right. Is there a motion for Peter's?
Yes.
There's a motion.
I'm
Is there a
making the
second?
motion.
I'll second.
Okay, moved in second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, motion carries 3-0.
Break?
Yes,
Can we take that same tactic the next time?
yes.
Okay, here it comes. Be careful what you...
3-2.
To promote. We're going to promote it.
No, we're going to encourage it.
Encourage. I think it was encouraged, but.
Oh, I
there was
just
a
voted,
promote.
oh, I thought it was promote. I changed my vote.
Well, do we want to clarify the motion? Was it promote or encourage?
I thought it was promote.
It
What
was encouraged. The last that word out of your, the last
It was
version was out of your mouth was
It was
encouraged.
encouraged.
Oh, okay.
Let the video approve that for us.
Chairman,
Madam Chair,
What's
there was a
up?
question on the last motion.
We need help?
Yeah.
turn
There was a
to
question on the last
Oh.
motion. Was the last word in that encourage or promote? I read encouraged, Lisa thought it was promote, and I don't know what the other two people that voted in the affirmative thought they were voting on.
Encourage, I think it was.
Okay, I'm
Are
good.
you good with
That's what I
encourage?
thought too.
Okay,
Now,
good,
you
all
guys
right.
wanna
You said you
change-
were going to change your vote.
No, and so,
Encourage.
10 minutes?
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah. Devastating.
If they don't have meeting. And before we start in again, we're still on infrastructure and services. We've made it through 2 of them, I think. All right, so, but before we get going, what I'd like to do is see what you guys think we can, let's set an expectation about how much longer we're going today, so that if we can release some people that are here from the county. Are we going to get to noise today? Keeping in mind, we still have, quite a few. We still have conservation open space, some more of infrastructure, and we also have the discussion about the objectives.
That's a bigger thing than any one of these particular...
It could be.
Being realistic, what do we have left?
Fun.
Conservation and open space?
We still have a few more points here in the vision statement, and it's, 10 to 4 now.
Yes.
Mr. Fasino's raised some questions on the objectives and implementation measures, some court cases that, we haven't had a chance to really look at.
So
We just
you're
came in this
wanting
morning.
to
So,
punt that one till later anyway?
well, it would be advisable, I think, that we at least have the opportunity before we finalize any discussion on that.
You talking about the mailing that we got last night about in the evening?
Yes. I didn't see it this morning because I was already gone.
Well,
We could still discuss it.
We could still discuss it, but I think that before,
if we didn't otherwise have time to deal with those
But we could
issues,
be, just talk about.
then I would say,
Okay.
yeah, but if we have time to go through them, I don't think...
Just have a preliminary discussion.
Yeah.
So, but here's my question, really, is there any chance we're getting to noise? Do we want to leave, I can't even talk anymore, leave around 5, right? Does anybody want to go much later than that?
No.
Okay, so we've got basically an hour. So if we say no to noise, then we'll do noise in our, I think it's the introduction next week. And then that we can release Amy, who is
Does
here.
does that make,
Was that-
does
That's-
that have to be revised?
That's next week. Instead of getting it being mailed to you, it's been handed out.
But is noise on this agenda?
No, noise is in your packet
Yeah.
already. That was going to be discussed today.
But
So
since
that can
all
be
of these,
carried forward?
yes,
But we just carry it
yes.
forward. We'll add it to next week.
So next week, we could do this introduction and we could do noise.
Yeah,
Yeah, good?
that works.
All right, so I think, see you later, Amy, that we'll see you next week. We really had the best of intentions, but we've covered a lot of ground, and it's important work.
Oh, Amy's the primary author on noise?
Yes, she's the
She's a county
consultant.
consultant. She and I work
Yes.
together on all of the elements.
Yes,
With
so we'll be
exception of
seeing a lot of her.
circulation.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So let's actually just see if we can make it, I mean, ideally, if we could make it through the rest of the infrastructure and conservation open space by 5, I'd be happy. And
I
then,
thought we just did infrastructure.
no, no, because there are still other bullet points here developed by the working draft as well as the conservation.
So are we going to take a motion on each bullet point?
Wait a minute.
We may have to.
Okay.
I don't know, are we necessarily taking a motion, or is we just coming to an agreement to be able to have a?
I think it's clear consensus. I think, we've all
Yeah.
agreed that the first bullet point, we've made some modifications to that. There was a vote on the second one,
Already
3-2
did
vote. So,
So if we can just go, like, the next one is water quality and water rights will be protected to ensure that they are sustained for future generations.
Why do we need that?
It's part of infrastructure, right?
But we don't have any control over the water quality or water rights. That's under the purview of the water districts, not us.
that's
oh,
true.
We
So
don't
I
have a
guess
water
we could,
element.
huh?
We don't have a water element either.
Well, we have
could-
policies and goals in public facilities as well as conservation open space that address water to the degree that the county has a say in it.
Okay.
There are things certainly the county can do, although it's limited because, the county does not provide water, they're separate districts. But just as we don't provide fire protection, but we have a lot of policies that deal with fire protection and safety issues. So I think that, we certainly want to consider water as a component of the general plan. And how
And there
it,
are a lot of policies,
There are a
or
lot
there
of
will be,
policies, yeah.
that speak to water. So this is, again, the umbrella sort of concept about,
Okay, so what would be an example of a water component to some other element in the general plan that would flow from this, from a guiding principle?
Can,
Unfair question?
maybe,
No?
no, I think he's researching
digging?
it.
can
He's
I,
digging.
can I make a suggestion of what I would potentially say there? Or do you want me to wait?
please go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't we word it somehow that our county is sensitive to the water rights and water quality in our county and agree to work with other agencies that we, something to that effect.
That's a-
Working with other agencies, water districts that own the water rights.
That's getting into a kind of a policy version of a water issue by the language that you've chosen, but on a policy.
The next
to-
bullet down
Right.
actually gets to that.
Right.
Oh, well,
And I
then
would
there you
suggest
go.
maybe some modification of that slightly, but I think that coordination with other agencies is a broader,
If you wanted
principle.
to specify under that instead, and just totally wipe out that bullet completely about the water quality and water rights, but stepping down through coordination among agencies, you could, i.e. list water, fire, whatever agencies that we need to be working with. You can include your safety. I mean, you're saying through coordination among agencies here in government services. We could just say with those specific districts, water companies, however you would want to word that. I just don't see that, granted, I care about our water as much as everybody else does. I just think that that's not a principle that we have any control over.
Well, there's at least one goal and 7 policies in public facilities element that
Has to do with
address
water.
water and wastewater. There are also policies in conservation open space that discuss water quality issues, runoff design issues that affect the water quality both in the rivers and lakes as well as groundwater, which we do regulate, wells and those kinds of things, sewage disposal issues. So to eliminate water, probably not the best idea, but you're right that we have limited control over what other agencies do with
So
water.
a thought that you started, Peter, was moving to through coordination among agencies, and I don't have this finished, I'm just throwing it out there. Essential services, such as, and you could parentheses, water, wastewater, fire, something, something, something.
Yeah, because this line up above isn't about runoff water. It's not about,
Right.
but it's not, so as far as, and I hear what you guys are saying out there, but to me, that's not, it doesn't fit in here for me.
Isn't water quality regulated by the state Regional Water Quality Control Board?
Yeah.
And so are we going to be adding on another layer of regulation tacked on top of what the state requires?
Well, it is to some degree. It's as far as industrial use and certain where waste discharge requirements are required, but not all aspects of development are regulated by the state.
I'd still prefer to step down through, you want to add the word water. What would you want to see there that would fit into this general plan that we're working on?
So my suggestion would be sort of reorganize that a little bit. The general plan promotes coordination among agencies to provide efficient and effective government services. And we could say including fire protection, water supply, whatever else
It's
you
not
want.
really government, they're not all government services, like essential services.
Essential services,
Yeah.
like that could,
Did you say essential instead of government?
Essential, yeah,
Yeah.
because they're not all government.
Well, you mean the fire department's not government?
well, they're
Know
all
what I mean?
a type of government. Water district's government, fire
Right.
district's government, they are government, but
Special,
special
like
districts are
governmental
all.
yeah,
entities.
yeah, that's true.
So Peter's idea is to focus on the bullet point that starts with through coordination and slug who we're coordinating with and for what purpose. Through coordinating among agencies, essential services will be.
Why don't we say protecting our future resources such as water, blah, 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 working with those agencies to protect?
Yeah, I think well, again, this is infrastructure and services, so it's not just resources. We're talking about fire protection.
The problem with that I see the way, water quality and water rights are so two different things.
They are.
Water rights are not within the purview of the county. Water quality certainly is in terms of development. And if you're attached to a sanitary district or if,
Why don't we
that's been-
move the concept of the water quality issues down into the conservation and open space? Because that's really where we're trying to conserve the quality of the water.
I like
Preserve it.
that.
That's, yeah.
So
I
It's
like
just,
that.
they're two separate, yeah.
It's in the wrong place for me.
This is, and it's always been a dilemma that planners face when we're dealing with water issues in general plans, because they overlap.
Right.
And this is, common in a lot of different functions of the general plans. They overlap. They address land use, it addresses public services, it
Environmental health and.
Yeah, there's a lot of different issues associated with water.
Okay, so then we're still down to through coordination among agencies. Essential services will be efficient and effective with measurable results. What does that mean?
Well, that gets to, that you want to see them, it's hard because you can't say, hey,
Well, I want plain
CPUD,
language.
let me see your measurable results, right?
The phrase measurable results sets off alarm bells
Yeah.
for me.
We're going to get to that in about half an hour.
I want to try and get to that because, I mean, I really do want, because I think it's, I can see give us a little advance notice on where we're going with this. So I hope we get to it.
Can we break this down into plain language? Because this, to me, says 20,000 things. It doesn't have a purpose. It doesn't have a principle in it that, I need plain language there.
Okay.
That's too open.
Let me try this. The general plan promotes coordination among agencies to provide efficient and effective essential water, wastewater, fire protection, and other services.
I can live with that. Read that one more time, please.
Got too many little arrows circling around. Let's see if I get it right this time. The general plan promotes coordination among agencies to provide efficient and effective essential water, wastewater, fire protection, and other services. And other essential, let's put essential at the end, other essential services.
Yep, I'm good with that.
I am too.
Oh, fine.
Anybody out there, are you guys good with that? Comments?
May I suggest that that closes out this portion of the,
No, because there's one more bullet.
Yeah, you
well,
meant,
there's one more bullet on this piece of paper, but that,
well, we're going to get to that. Can we finish, can we do this one?
well, if we're taking public comment, it's because we think we're done with adding in
No,
components.
I'd like public comment
We've
on
been
this.
taking it after each bullet.
Right,
Would you read it one more time?
yes.
Peter?
After each bullet.
The general plan promotes coordination among agencies to provide efficient and effective water, wastewater, fire protection, and other essential services.
Good. Yeah, that's good. I just want to make a point here. There was a long discussion about how we have no control over water rights, and I need to clarify that for folks.
We're going to address that in the next bullet. Can you hold it so we can get moving? Just asking, because we're going to discuss it on the bottom
We
bullet
moved
right
it.
now. We moved it.
You moved water rights?
Yeah, we moved it down because we're going to have a whole discussion
Okay.
on it in the proper place.
Okay.
You're
Well, we
awesome.
moved water quality down.
Water quality and water rights, we moved that whole thing down into open conservation, right?
Well, I was thinking water quality.
Yes.
Water rights maybe more appropriately if we're going to address it in this section
In
here.
open space, it would be water quality.
You want to put it there and go with it and let him talk?
Let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah, I know. Can you make,
You can hear him now, you can hear
Shut
him
up,
later.
see how
can you
good that
be
works.
succinct? Go ahead.
Talk about water rights. I just want to make this,
Okay.
this is really important. I wouldn't bring it up if I didn't think it was
Okay.
really important. Okay. Okay. You know, we've been doing the MOQWISE process for 22 months. We just came to the conclusion of it, and groups are,
The what? I'm sorry.
Oh, there's a process called MOQWISE,
Yes.
and it was about future management of the McCollum River. And it was a process that involved environmental groups and water agencies and cities and counties. And we had a long discussion about water rights. One thing I want you all to appreciate about your role in water rights, and it's critically important, okay? When someday the county will be going back to the State Water Board to get assignments of its area of origin water rights. It might be on the stand, it might be on the MOQ, okay? It might be in a Copperopolis situation, it might be in a San Andreas or McCollum Hill situation. Okay. When it does that, there are certain criteria that the state looks at to determine whether it's going to give you its water right and how it's going to condition that water right. Okay. When you do that, you get protests from people. When you do it on the MOQ, you tend to get protests from East Bay Mud and San Joaquin County and Amador because they're the other players. Okay. Now, one of the big issues that they bring up
Wait,
is...
can I ask one question?
Yeah.
When you say we're going to the state, are you talking about like CPUD and CCWD, our
Well,
districts? Is that who you're talking about?
it-
That's where?
Yes, those...
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, just
Could
wanted
be
to
Valley
make-
Springs, all right. Okay.
Whatever water purveyor
Right.
is, but it's our water purveyors.
Yeah,
Okay.
or technically under state law, it could even be a private party, but I don't even want to talk about
Okay, all
that
right,
today.
all right. So when you're saying you or, our,
Yeah.
I just wanted to
The
clarify
county.
that. Our
county
water
entities.
purveyors, okay.
County water purveyors.
Okay.
Will be going, okay.
Okay.
Okay, under that, they have to meet what's called the public interest criteria. And what the water board has defined what the public interest includes. And one of the key issues that the public interest includes is the impact of the water use on the environment. So CCWD is in a bad spot here because they have absolutely no control over what mitigation measures you guys put on implementing this general plan. But when they go to the State Water Board, they're going to have to say, our general plan, this water is going to be used for residential development, commercial development, and industrial development consistent with our general plan, and we do a wonderful job of mitigating those impacts. The reason they're going to have to do that is because San Joaquin is going to protest and say, well, our general plan does all these wonderful things. So that in this, you end up in this sort of public interest competition over water. So what I want you to realize, when you sit down and do the mitigation measures for this general plan, and when you look at how you're going to reduce the impacts of this future development, that it has an absolutely key role in us getting the water to do the development in the future. So please remember that. It's not that we recognize that it may be CPUD or CCWD actually going to the water board to get the right, but it's the actions that you guys take and the board takes and that the county adopts that's going to have a big influence on whether they get that water. That's all I want to make.
Thank you. We might
Thank you.
need reminding about that one down the road, too. Anyone else? All right, so is there a motion on the guiding
I'll make
principle?
it.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. So the last one, residents will have access to medical and emergency services and opportunities for lifelong learning and enrichment at educational institutions. Would you care to comment now, Commissioner Tuno?
I would just draw a line through it. It doesn't belong in the guiding principles.
I have issues with it. I mean, I read about our enrichment at educational institutions, and I look at how much money we have paid on our tax bills in our bond dollars, and we own the land, but we have no college, and yes, I know they're trying to bring little classes in here or there, but that's not what we were promised. So I really struggle with that, having educational institutions in there. Let's go back to our preschools and build more, because I think that's where we need to start.
When I look at the draft general plan, and I did, it doesn't say anything about medical institutions. And the only thing it says about educational institutions is there are no plans to build any more schools. That's it. So this is kind of a guiding principle in search of something in the general plan to guide that isn't there.
I mean, I can see the importance of having principles of wanting access to medical and emergency services and opportunities for long learning and enrichment. And I mean, we all sit here and complain our kids have to leave our county to go to school because we don't offer anything here for them. I can see how we want that to be a principle, but are we ready for it? Should it be a principle now, or is that something in 5 years we should be relooking at and seeing if our bond ever goes anywhere? We don't have anything to offer.
I guess it gets to the same question that we had as far as economic development. What is it we're really trying to get at over the next 20 years? Do we want to ensure that there is, medical facilities in the county?
But this isn't economic development, it's infrastructure and services.
Right.
I think Mr. Wooster put it best. There's nothing in the general plan that is guided by this statement.
Which could either point out that the statement's unnecessary or the general plan doesn't adequately address
Needs to be looked at.
that issue.
Can I ask a question? Peter, Didn't you have a meeting with the school districts, and didn't they provide you with some suggestions for amending the public facilities element?
There was a document that was submitted to me from representative of the school Office of Education that suggested some policies.
And there are several places where we discuss emergency services in the plan, so that's an issue that's cogent to a principal.
Well, doesn't Obamacare address the medical and emergency services? We have a hospital in the county.
It's like person
We
that
have
comes in.
clinics. Everybody has to have medical insurance now, and if they don't, the county's providing it to them. I mean, but how's that a part of the general plan? Isn't that more into our social services plan?
Well, the county does provide a number of social services, including, indigent care and, a lot of other mental health requirements, and
Right.
things like that. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other on this, whether it needs to be a guiding principle or not. These are statements that were developed through the working of the community groups over the number of years ago.
And I'd offer a couple of things. One is an observation, because I'm currently working with a community in Arizona that was just, in 2012, got a satellite campus of Arizona State University, and the success was attributed solely to the community that found an existing facility, paid for the renovation, and now there's a satellite campus of Arizona State University in that community. So it's not like it's impossible to get more educational institutions or medical services or any of it. So here's my point. What if we said medical and emergency services and opportunities for lifelong learning and enrichment in educational institutions is encouraged?
Let me ask this about the example that you found in Arizona. Was it because they put in their general plan a guiding principle to get an educational institution?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, because
I could check, though.
We can do all kinds of things
Yes.
that aren't in the general plan. We can get Delta College to, finally give us a campus, satellite campus. Doesn't have to be in the general plan for all those things to happen.
But on the other, let's just expand that concept. Let's say that there is in fact, they located the campus in a vacant city-owned building. So let's say that if there were justification for either giving the building, giving it to them, at $1 a month or whatever, it was justified because it was in their
We have an empty jail.
general plan. Yeah, but we do have an empty jail.
I'm all for it. I'm all for education. I'm all for having medical services. I just don't see how it fits into this general plan.
All those, the idea of cooperating and finding some way to make something happen by virtue of a benefit that the county finds itself in a position to offer, that can all happen without this clause being as a guiding principle in the general plan.
True.
I'm all for that too, exactly. County finds a way to make something happen that would not otherwise have happened. Perfect.
Great.
It doesn't need to be
A guiding principle.
a guiding principle. That's all. It's conceptually, it has all the value that it deserves. It just doesn't belong.
Even if you put the verbiage in there that the county will continue to research avenues for providing better medical and emergency services and opportunity for education.
Beginning to sound more like a policy.
Yeah, and there's a place for that. Under safety, for one thing.
Public facilities, services.
So I have a question.
Emphysema.
The previous bullet that we just approved talked about providing efficient and effective essential services. Would we consider emergency services essential services, so we could suggest that that's already been taken care of above, or not?
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Oh, I
so.
thought Julie did you just shake
No,
no?
I actually just clicked my mouse.
Oh, okay. So,
That was slide.
okay. So emergency services, we can essentially say are taken care of above.
Essential services.
Yeah.
That'll qualify.
Because emergencies,
It's
now,
not saying we're going to provide it, it's saying that we're going to coordinate among
Right.
agencies, which I'm okay with, because if Delta College decided to perform, or Yosemite, I would be more than
That's
thrilled
kinda
to
where
death.
I was
So I would be
thinking.
willing to coordinate and work that type of thing out.
so we're considering, so we could consider emergency services and educational.
Absolutely,
up
in my
the-
opinion.
Up on the other one, okay. And then that would leave out medical, but that's just the way life is. Okay, is that,
No, you sneaked in educational, and again,
Well, she
this is a
did.
guiding principle in search of something to guide that isn't there.
well, I believe the school districts
Well, I think
do
the
have
guiding
some
principle
proposal.
here is coordination.
Yeah.
That's the
And
word
so
that
if,
I'm falling for.
if
is
the
the
district
coordination.
decides, hey, we want to work with the county, then we have a principle that says, cool, we're
Yeah.
ready to go. Same thing with medical,
It's just
for that example.
coordinating, it's not saying we're doing it. Like the next line says, we will have access to. Well, we don't have access to it, but I'm willing to coordinate with someone if they came forward and decided to perform.
There's a really good reason to want that, too.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a provision in the general plan law that talks about the degree to which the county has to coordinate with school districts in production of the general plan, and it requires consultation and such. So I think just by recognizing that, you're willing to coordinate, you've met your obligation under the code section for that. So I think that's a good reason to include.
So can we completely scratch this last bullet
I think that's,
and just make it fall under coordinations among other agencies? Would you all be willing to do that?
I'm more comfortable with that approach than saying that those are not really general plan issues, because of the
They're not
reasons.
realistic, they're not principles we can ever even come close
But
to.
the coordination part is.
I
Right.
agree with
From
coordination.
the one we
It's
just
not even
did.
the question of whether or not they're general plan issues, it's the question is whether or not they're guiding principles. I mean, that's what we've been here for 8 hours doing, is talking about the guiding principles. And not everything in the general plan goes to a guiding principle. There's not a guiding principle for everything in the general plan. So those are two different points. And that's assuming that it's even relevant to the general plan.
Well, the coordination of educational institution is by law relevant to the general plan, and
Right,
that's
so if
what
we're
we're trying
saying
to
we're
acknowledge.
including those in the previous
Right, that's what I'm trying to
discussion,
get to.
that
Trying to
we-
get to the
I
place
think we're
where-
good.
I think we're good, yeah.
So I'm getting we're just going to strike the last bullet? So we're just getting back around to what you suggested in the first place?
What do you know?
Yeah.
But
What was the decision on water bullet? Was,
I think we're talking about it under conservation.
Yes, we're moving.
water, you told me water quality was going under conservation, but you said that water rights was going to go under coordination among agencies. And that's why we added the word wastewater. I
Okay,
thought that's what,
okay.
we were adding it
Yes,
to
I believe so.
coordination among agencies. And, I mean, obviously, we've already voted to accept that as is, but because of the fact that if somebody came and wanted to offer medical and emergency services or schools, do you also want to add that to coordinating with the?
I think that the general and other essential services
Okay,
is
good. Kinda
sufficient
covers the-
caveat to
perfect.
cover all, or umbrella to cover it all. So then we have 3 different statements, basically starting with what was provided by the 2008, as modified by the Planning Coalition, and we further modified today. And I think we took votes on each one of those. The first one, the second one, and the fourth one was that cover the,
I don't,
Second, wait a second.
yeah, on infrastructure and service, maybe we should just read them.
okay. So the first one.
Even though we've already voted on
under-
all of them,
yeah.
right?
So infrastructure and services, development will not outpace the provision of adequate services, infrastructure, or, there've been so many.
Are you sure we agreed on
We
that?
didn't agree on that.
Where'd you go?
No,
The very first bullet, we had,
we
I
did
thought.
not do that.
Oh, okay, that's fine, that's fine. New development will, okay, thanks.
It's 2,
Not this
paragraph
one.
2?
Yeah,
Okay.
as
Section one.
modified. And then The second one was the roads and streets, which passed on a 3-2 vote. And then we just modified the fourth bullet about coordination with agencies.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. All right, we're moving on to conservation and open space. And we have,
Is that what we're going to call it, conservation and open space?
yeah, I believe so, because that's what the element is.
Oh,
Well,
doesn't,
I don't think it has to
doesn't
be.
have to
Oh,
comply
here.
with that.
Do you have an alternative?
Because again, this should be sort of the umbrella principles that guide all of the policies.
You know, a better pairing would be land use and conservation. Because conservation deals with wildlife habitats and a
What
lot
about
of different
natural
things.
resources? So
And
we don't-
natural resources.
We don't get confused with the labels of the elements.
Right, right.
It could also get into, if we address things in the resource production element, this probably would get to conservation, land use,
So what
safety.
do you
So
want?
rather than call it conservation open space, I would recommend we call it natural resources.
Okay.
Oh, conservation, natural resources?
Just natural resources.
Oh, just natural resources.
Well, you want to go first? You want to go first?
No, I know, I don't. Yeah, I do sometimes, once in a while.
Well, okay. We have essentially two versions here. The one I originally came up with, which also appears in Mr. Tuno's,
That's where it came
what is
from.
now called Natural Resources. And we have the CPC version, regarding which I spoke at some length last time. The difficulties I had with it, which I can go through again if anybody wants to hear it. But looking at their first bullet point, the risks of natural and industrial hazards will be mitigated to the greatest extent possible to protect residents. Is that sort of independent of how much it might cost? How are we going to mitigate the risks of natural hazards to the greatest extent possible?
Well, for example, if we had a fault zone, you wouldn't build houses on the top of it.
Well, the biggest
If there
natural,
was a slope, a hill on a big slope, I'm just guessing that's what it's
Well,
referring to.
but Mr. Bush's point is well taken, because when you look at the language, there's no end to the greatest extent possible. That's totally open-ended.
It's open space, right?
Well,
and when I look at that, the biggest hazard I see is really fire in this county,
True, huge.
as opposed to flooding, which occurs some places but not very many. And I suppose if you were going to mitigate it to the greatest extent possible, you would eradicate all vegetation within 5 miles of any house. And so, to me, this is just not realistic.
agreed.
Agreed.
Would just striking to the greatest extent possible, would just striking to the greatest extent possible solve that problem?
Then it's really open-ended.
But here, industrial hazards such as a fire at an industrial plant, correct?
No.
Industrial hazards such as a spill.
Yes.
I think it could be the proximity of potentially hazardous industry and residences. So you say we design our land use to separate those so we don't have a conflict between those.
Okay, it's not
That's a potential
Yeah, but
way to
I
address
understand
it.
what it is, but it just does, now that we're focusing on natural resources, it ain't one.
True.
So originally what it said was the risks of flooding, fire hazards, and climate change will be mitigated to the greatest extent possible to protect residents. And then the Planning Coalition changed that up recently and changed it from the risks of natural and industrial hazards And I'm assuming that that resulted from,
And that's also not a natural resource issue. That's a safety issue.
I know, but what I'm saying is if you go back to the original version and you don't go with the Planning Coalition's revised version, the risk of flooding, fire hazards, and climate change will be mitigated to, I mean, protect more than residents. We want to protect all of our surroundings. I mean, the loss of trees is just as critical as losing, residences as far as biomes destroyed when it destroys my forest. So I would go back to this. I think adding the word industrial hazards, risks is actually a result of discussions on the asphalt plant. That's my personal opinion because that didn't pop up till then, and this was done in 2008. So I would rather go back to the original version as it's stated and be mitigated to protect our natural resources, residents, and anything and everything in our county, protecting our county.
Well,
You don't
suppose we
see-
said something like the risks of natural hazards, including fire, flooding, fire hazard.
Yes, I like that.
I don't like the climate change business. It looks a little politically correct to me, and I don't know what the hell we're supposed to be doing about that.
Well, I think we've already struck that, so I think we're good there.
Okay, so you've got, to protect our natural resources is the key. We want to protect our natural resources. We're going to do it by mitigating as best we can the risks to those natural resources, including, to wit, fire, flooding, and what else?
Well, if you eliminate climate change, then it's just those two.
The more I look at
Natural
this,
disasters that could occur in our county. I mean, there was a whole lot of mining done underneath this county. We could just collapse.
Yeah.
It's all natural.
I mean, I guess I should
Geologic
say a little bit
hazards,
more about the
land
fire
fire.
hazard situation. The fire hazard that we have is a result of overstocked forests.
Agreed.
Debris lying all over the ground, too many little trees and too much brush. The only way really that's ever going to get fixed is thinning this stuff and burning it.
So let me make you really happy because the forestry has given a grant to Arnold, and they are actually getting ready to do a 300-foot cutback around the subdivision up at Blue Lake Springs, all the way around.
Okay.
That's good,
Now,
but
this is
not all
Forest
fires
Service.
are bad, that's what I'm getting at, okay? And we're going to have to use prescribed fires to fix the problem that we have.
Not this year. Not this year.
At some point, we're going to have to.
No way.
Are we talking county function here? Are we talking BLM and?
That's, not a county
We're
function.
talking to do anything we can to be responsive to protecting our natural resources and eliminating and mitigating anything that could potentially be coming. If we have a way to mitigate flood, we should be looking at that. If we have a way to mitigate fire, we should be looking at that. So those are good principles for us to have. Any type of natural disaster that could occur
Yeah, so I
here.
think we need to bring it back up to the higher principle level rather than
Yeah.
getting into the details of what it is. So we want to protect our citizens
Yes,
and our resources
Yes.
from natural hazards.
yes.
That's
That's
simple.
it.
There you go.
Thank
Write
you.
that down, quick.
Before I
Mark
forget
Twain
it.
just wrote the quintessential bullet point.
You did, huh?
So,
Oh, and open. So are we addressing open space now, or are we just calling it natural resources?
Natural resources.
okay. So Julie suggested that we add natural and man-made hazards in there because
Because
it
then
could,
mining and what have you
Right.
is technically man-made. just a thought.
Yeah,
Oh, I
no,
was
that's
just,
good.
okay, I didn't know
All right.
yeah.
That's good.
hazards.
You could have a dam ruptured and they're all man-made. Yeah, we'll go with
I
that.
want one right next to your house.
Mine?
Yeah.
He just,
Well, that also could be
for
huge-
the record,
huge
he just
chemical spill.
threatened me.
Yeah.
Encourage the motion.
And, you know, as we work our way down, we have some goals that address certain kinds of hazards, and we have policies of how we address that. We coordinate with OES on
We've
those
got
kinds of
this
things.
one clean little statement that addresses our concerns with natural resources, and presumably there's places in the general plan that it relates to. I can't think of one offhand, but I'm sure you can, right?
Several.
It's a wrap?
Did you add the word man-made or take it out?
It's in.
I recommend it's in. Do we want to have public comment on that?
Yeah, I would. But could you read it first, and then we'd like to hear from you guys?
Protect citizens and resources from natural and man-made hazards.
I like it.
Would anyone like to come up and?
Covers everything.
It just doesn't flow for me. Natural resources, and we're only talking about natural hazards. Maybe it needs a different kind of title. Natural resources, I thought what was there made more sense. Maintenance of open space, wildlife habitats, agricultural lands, ability to maintain the productive resources. Natural resources, to me, means lumber, minerals, water.
So that means fire, flooding, it covers it.
That's a safety issue. I guess
I
I'm just throwing that out because that one I can't, I just don't get it.
I think the point's well taken, that the subject of natural resources has to do with a lot more than just protecting them against disasters. It's, you know.
Well, I would hope that we would have some other principles under that general title. So this is not the only thing.
That's the big
Or
thing.
or we could,
And then
we could change it to safety and then have a different, we put the title safety, and if that's, it doesn't matter to me how you, we don't have to have the titles. That
Vicki,
would
what
just
did you
to
say
help.
you thought was the better title?
Safety, if you're talking about natural disasters and fire.
But it's not just that. I don't think it is just safety.
But then it,
What does it have to do with natural resources, I guess? That's my confusion. When I hear the word natural resources, nothing like that even comes to my mind. It comes to my mind, lumber, logging.
Yeah. Well, how about natural resources and safety?
Say that again?
Natural resources and safety, or safety and natural resources, or, I mean, they,
As the heading.
as the heading.
And you're
Well,
wanting
wait
to
a- wait a
use,
second.
we're stuck on the word natural resources because why? Where are we, because we're pulling that off one of the elements.
Well, it was originally called
Conservation.
conservation and open space, and it didn't seem to really, my concern was that it would get confused with the element
Right.
conservation and open space, where we
Okay.
didn't really have, you know, the headings for these statements.
So we all seem to agree and like the bullet, so we just need a better subject line.
is that the only bullet we're putting under that heading?
I don't know, we're not finished yet.
No, we're not finished yet.
Okay, so the language that Mr. Wooster had written, that I edited down a little bit to include it here, had to do with land use, open space, and you could say conservation. As a subject, collectively, that's a bigger deal than mitigating hazards that affect our land. Now, is
I mean, there's
that-
going to be overlap with all of these,
Okay.
to all the elements. And
But-
so, you know, the ones we talked about earlier with economic development is also going to address land use and other things like that. So I wouldn't get hung up on the title of the heading.
I think that Vicki had a good point, that what we've written here really does sound like it belongs under a safety heading rather than just natural resources. Why not just fix it by making our heading safety and natural
That's what
resources?
he was suggesting, yes.
In that order, because that's the order in which the bullet points will appear below.
Sounds good to me. So we were continuing on to the other bullets. There was discussion about, under this heading, safety and natural resources.
Yes, as I said, I spoke to this earlier, and I'm happy to do it again, briefly. This starts off that open space, wildlife habitat, scenic vistas, et cetera, will be protected and maintained, period. Open space and scenic vistas are basically what you see when you're looking at other people's property. And I suppose we're going to protect it and maintain it from those people, according to this, without paying anything for that. That's what this seems to say to me. Same thing's true with agricultural lands. As to forests, as I suggested earlier, we have protected them almost to death over the last 100 years. And I suppose we're going to be maintaining them in the same bad condition they are now. That's not proper. On top of that, the federal government that owns much of the forest land in this county has its own rules that they enforce, and the private timber companies such as SPI have to follow the state rules. I don't see why the county ought to be getting into that. With respect to rivers, it looks as if we're going to protect them from any further water development, any diversions that people might need water for, according to this, and maintain them, same reason. As to lakes, as I pointed out earlier, there aren't any natural lakes in this county. Every lake sits behind a dam that somebody else built, maintains and operates, those somebody's being East Bay Mud, CPUD, PG&E, the federal government, irrigation districts, and I'm sure some others. So I cannot accept the CPC version for those reasons.
So if we put the word that we were going to appreciate and value our open space, wild habitat, and scenic vistas, we can appreciate them and have them a part of our principles, because I think we all do appreciate having those things in our county. That's what we love here.
Okay, that's true, but how does that,
It doesn't give you a guiding principle, it just makes a statement that we appreciate the beauty that we have.
right, so how is that a valid guiding principle that ends up being related to a policy somewhere?
So I guess my question would go back to Peter, because I don't have an answer for you. Do we need to reference the open space wildlife habitat to the element as a guiding principle? Or can we let all of that fall under our natural resources statement?
I guess we need to go back to the opening vision statement and see if there's something in there that discusses it. You know, we talk about the quality of life, we talk about the character, physical beauty. So what is it about the physical beauty that needs to be addressed in the general plan as a principle? We don't want to have the county turn ugly. How do we go about doing that? What's the principle behind, you know, protecting, preserving, enhancing, whatever verb you want, the qualities that attract businesses and residents and tourists to the county? You know, maybe we say something that, you know, the open space, the scenic vistas, the, you know, whatever is, you know, is integral to the economic development and enjoyment by the county.
So I guess
Or
what-
something like,
I'm just sort of thinking out loud
No,
here a
I
little bit.
understand, and I appreciate that, but I'm going to have to go back to what David said, because it was a good question and valid. How does that make it a principle in our general plan?
because it's something, it sets the tone for a lot of other aspects of the, I think, of the elements, because as you aptly said, those features are appreciated and they're valued. And it was, if anything, that was the strongest commonality of people participating in the workshops, in the town hall meetings, in, you know, especially from McCollum Hill, and I'm sure a lot of the other communities, and if you looked at the reports coming out of that working draft, There probably, I mean, that was probably the strongest consensus that there was, is that what we see out there, those open spaces, with the cows on them, and the trees, and the forests, and the lakes, they're all of value to us.
But we don't own them?
That we don't have to own them.
So I think, so that makes it very difficult.
We own a lot of them. We own a lot of them because they're national forests, they're state forests, they're... But let me finish. Let me just throw this out there. Let me just, as a starting point, even if you just said, open space, scenic vistas, wildlife habitat, agricultural lands, and forests are productive resources and highly valued.
What I had suggested is, yes, it's good to have open space, wildlife habitats, and all the rest of it. How are you going to make that happen? The way you make that happen is you make sure that the people who own them are able to keep them that way.
Yeah, and that's
what I wrote down, and that's what Tuna was incorporated.
Right, and how you enable them to keep it that way is all in the land use element, as shown in as far as what their land use designation and the zoning. That's how they keep them. But I think it is important to demonstrate up front, at the top level, that we as people, we live here, and because of those benefits, as is looking at those national parks, is looking at your ranch with the cattle on it, not trying to limit your use of it, and we're not saying anything about that we want to limit your ability to. Not in a statement like this. I think it's important just to say that we care about that. That's why I think it's a guiding principle.
Can you just read the last sentence again? Or the last, few words that you added?
I would just actually shorten what Mr. Wooster wrote, and that is that open space, scenic vistas, wildlife habitats, agricultural lands, and forests are productive resources. So one, we're recognizing they're productive resources and are highly valued. That's it. We don't have to say what we're going to do with them. We don't have to say why, I think it's an acknowledgement that that grouping is a key asset to people in this county.
So all you're doing is making the statement that they're productive resources. You're not
And
saying
they're,
we're going to maintain
and they're
them
highly valued.
and highly valued.
It doesn't have to be like that, but I just think it's,
No, I'm just trying to get it
Yeah.
down in writing because I understand where you're going. I'm just trying to make sure we're not saying that we can protect them, we can't maintain them because we don't own them.
That's why I took all of that
But when
out.
you put productive resources and highly valued, I'm happy with that. Well, they're productive resources and they're
Rivers and
highly
lakes.
valued. I have no issues with that.
Could you read the first part of that again?
Yes, it's actually the first part of what you wrote, but it would, instead of maintenance of, just say open space, scenic vistas, wildlife habitats, rivers, what was the other one?
And lakes.
Rivers and
I had
lakes,
ag lands.
agricultural lands and forests are productive resources and highly valued.
Well, I can't agree with scenic vistas. At first place, it's repetitive of open space, and it implies that other people have some right or stake in just a scenic vista as such.
If I get everything else, I'll give you the scenic vista. No.
Are we actually saying that scenic vistas are not productive resources in this county? Is that what we're really saying? Because are we really saying that scenic vistas are not a productive resource in this county?
What do they produce?
Land value.
Different than open space?
It's a specific type of open space.
Based on somebody's judgment that one has scenic value and the other does not?
I'll give you an example. A gentleman came up here from Valley Springs early in the general plan process, and he actually owns a property that Castle Rock is on. And he said, you know what? I have development ideas I want to do with my property, but the one thing I'm not going to change is Castle Rock, because that is a scenic vista that everybody associates Valley Springs with. And we all said, boy, what a wonderful, enlightened idea. So that is, for him, he recognized that he owned a scenic vista, and he actually wanted to maintain that scenic vista while he developed his property. And that, I thought, was a very wise choice on his part, and I thought was a very good thing to do for the community, because he was making a choice.
And how does that relate to general plan?
Has it related to the general plan?
Yeah.
That to identify that scenic vistas are a valued natural resource and asset.
The value in this Castle Rock came from the owner.
No, I'm not saying that, I'm not disagreeing with that. And let's talk about scenic vistas for a second. No one is saying, Mr. Wooster, that all of these things have to be freely provided by a separate landowner. Nobody is saying that. In fact, we've been saying for years the exact opposite. The idea here is to let's create markets so people can be compensated for the values that they do create, whether it's a scenic vista, or whether it's a water quality benefit, or whether they're providing habitat benefits. These are all assets that we can actually get people compensated for providing. There are people who will pay to preserve scenic vistas. There are people who will pay to preserve wildlife habitats. There are people who will pay to preserve oak woodlands. We're not getting a part of that action, and that's not a good thing for Calaveras County.
Well, we don't own that land, so
No,
whoever
but what I'm saying
does
is-
own it would benefit from it, not us. Therefore, it's not really a portion of our general plan.
It is exactly a portion of our general plan.
What I'm hearing you say, and I just kind of say what I'm thinking, so I'm sorry if I'm rude. But what I'm hearing you say is, I don't own that piece of land, but I'm going to put it in the general plan that says you can't do anything to it
That's
to make
not
it
what we
anything
said.
other than what I want it to be.
That is
So
not
if
what we said.
But it basically, what you're asking us to say in here
It's
is,
got value.
but it's not our value. It's value to the public to view, and it's beautiful. That's the only
The
value it
general
has.
plan is a regulatory document. It's regulatory. That's why it exists. So everything that you put in it, there's some regulation that you're attaching to that.
That's right.
I think it's also opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I think what Mr. Facito is getting at is that if
Holy
you
cow.
have a policy, let's say that in a development, you can cluster your project, maybe even get density bonus, if you set aside some of these resources, whether it's scenic vistas, some open space, some wildlife habitat. So that's set aside by the property owner in the development of that. They can get benefit from it by conservation easements, various mechanisms that are used to protect that benefit the property owner, not as a mandate from the county, but through a willing participation between an organization and the property owner, that we provide for the opportunity for the developer or the property owner to do that in the general plan, and that we recognize that those are important assets to the community. And I was going to add to, or suggest we add to Fawn's statement, highly valued and are important to the economic well-being of the county, because they do provide an economic benefit. Maybe benefit is better than well-being.
When I
Let
hear
me give an
that, though, I hear you putting a restriction in
No.
place
No, I'm
by
not-
Let me
saying
give an example, Peter. Let me give an example. Okay. State of California, not us, State of California requires people to mitigate oak woodland impacts when they develop projects. State of California requires that. That money, sometimes it's provided on site, sometimes it's provided through an in lieu fee. That money can go one of two places. It can go back to the state of California to spend in some other county to buy oak woodland from some other people, some other owners. Or, if we had an oak woodland ordinance, it could stay in this county, and that money could be used by the county to help purchase conservation easements from willing sellers in Calaveras County.
With conditions dictated by the state.
Willing owners can actually get money for doing what they're already doing, which is leaving oak woodland on their land. That's a good thing for them. Doesn't require everybody to do it, but it creates an economic opportunity for people who are trying to keep these ranches productive and going, to get another stipend to assist their business.
You're talking about a transaction between two parties that has nothing to do with the county.
It does. We need to have the Oak Woodland ordinance to make it viable here. We're not doing that, so all of our mitigation money for Oak Woodland leaves this county and helps ranchers in other counties keep their operations alive. I think there might be one or two ranchers out there who would like to get money to do what they're already doing, which is providing Oak Woodland in this county and for the state of California. And we have a chance to do that. That's only one example. We could provide others. And there's, as we go through the conservation element of the general plan, you'll see some of those others. So I just wanted to say, you're headed in the right direction. Are productive resources and highly valued.
Thank you. So,
I'm
let's,
still-
I
go
think,
ahead.
I think there's two things. I mean, one, I think the scenic vistas are still up for discussion. And then Peter's addition, which I would suggest amendment to that. But the rest of it, were we good at that point? I'm just trying to see where we need to go from here. I mean, were we good with the open space, maybe scenic vistas, wildlife habitats, agricultural lands and forests are, oh, and then the rivers and the lakes are productive resources, and highly valued. Are we good up to that point?
Well, not entirely, because
Okay.
I don't see the value of a statement that doesn't seem to have a purpose to it other than it's a state of mind kind of a statement. I don't see that it produces anything. It doesn't give direction to anything.
I think it does. I think it gives, but we're saying up front, top of the house, not the very top with the vision, but the vision also, it also supports what we said in the vision. But the next level of the house, we're saying that these assets in our county are highly valued. So,
Okay, look at the verb. Everywhere else, when we talk about these principles, these guiding principles, there's some kind of an action implied. The county will do this. The county will do that. Okay? This one is just a state of being. These are highly valued.
well, then I really like Peter's recommendation. I would say that they're highly valued and contribute to the economic vitality of the county.
Which makes
That's
it
just another,
worse.
it's just
makes
an
it
add-on.
worse.
It does make it worse, because anytime I see these principles going in and attached to this general plan, what I see we're doing is attaching more regulation. So anybody that has open space, wildlife habitat, scenic vistas, whatever they have, rivers, lakes that we don't even own, anytime we attach something to this, we're taking control of somebody else's property that we don't have the right to take control over. I love all of those things I just listed. That's why I live here. That's why you live here. But I don't own them. My county doesn't own them.
But I don't have to own them to highly
I know,
value them.
but you don't. But the minute you put highly valued in our general plan and as a principle, anybody that comes up and says, I want to do this, they're going to go, no, because the principle says it's highly valued and we can't let you do it because we're going to protect it. That's what happens every time we put a new regulation or principle in place. And that's what frustrates me. We don't own it. We can say it's beautiful and it makes our county beautiful, but the minute we start attaching anything else to it, we don't own it. It doesn't have a principle for it. There's nothing in the element that says how we're going to control this.
Actually, the agricultural lands, we do have influence over because we provide Williamson Act tax preferences for them. The forests, we provide forest.
Management plans.
I don't want to say essentially it's a forest. It's the forestry equivalent of the Williamson Act. It's the.
Really, go ask the forest if you can cut down a tree. I bet you the
That's not-
forestry tells you no.
What we're talking about
We don't have
here-
any ownership of it.
We provide tax incentives for the maintenance of agricultural lands and forest lands. That's a valuable thing for the county to do.
No, whenever they log, we get paid taxes.
So I think Peter's got a suggestion.
How about our valuable productive resources and opportunities for voluntary maintenance of these resources shall be encouraged?
I'm sorry, Peter.
Yeah,
I was in a
voluntary
fog there.
maintenance.
Can you do that again, please?
Without reading the whole list of all the resources.
So they
They
would
are-
be included.
Yeah, the list of the resources are valuable, productive resources, and opportunities for voluntary maintenance of these resources shall be encouraged.
So let me give you an example of my fear of this. No, I don't like that word. Adding rivers and lakes was a really big deal, okay? So if we decide, and when the Moke River comes up being a big issue, wild and scenic again, they're going to take this document, they're going to smack it in front of the state and say, see, here's our county's principles. We want to preserve those rivers, lakes, streams. Everything has an attachment to it. So it makes me fearful of approving anything that's going to damage our future rights on properties that technically we don't even own. It makes me nervous because I always see an attachment to it when we're doing this. When we've gone through all these other principles, I can say to you, okay, yeah, I can turn to this element and it's right there. I get why we're putting that principle in there. When I'm looking at open space, wildlife habitat, I mean, I can't protect a squirrel from being beaten by an owl in the wildlife habitat world. But I can't find anywhere in this element that's going to make me say I should put that in my principles. Except for it's beautiful and I love it. That's the only thing I can say about it.
I think we're...
Excuse me.
Go ahead.
I've got a little bit, this timeout, I got a little problem with the format here. I appreciate that Mr. Infacino has input, but when is the public comment period and when is the board commission discussion period? Is there a separation at all?
I thought we were having kind of an open forum. I thought it worked pretty well, and there aren't a lot of people here. So I think it's important to get their input. And he's not repeating himself, he's actually providing some...
I think the input was good.
I do too.
As issues come up, it would be nice for people to address them.
And that's what we've been doing.
And you're not going to walk away and say you didn't have a chance to speak.
Right. So was that the point?
Yeah, I think we'd stay on course better if we structured the meeting according to the normal plan of the public comments, we discuss our stuff, we make a decision, they comment on our decision, and we move on.
Well, I think we have been doing that with some
Well, we had
additional...
plans for a lot more to accomplish.
Yes, we did, but
than
actually,
today.
well, personally, I feel very good about the interaction that we've had with our citizen representatives today. So let's come back around to, is there a proposal, some action here?
Well, I can go back to what I wrote the first time, striking scenic vistas, to say maintenance of open space, wildlife habitat, agricultural lands and forests, forget the rivers and streams, will be accomplished by the continued ability to maintain the protected resources in the county by those who own and operate them, period.
I move to accept the element as read by Mr. Wooster under the title
Safety and natural resources.
Safety and Natural Resources or Conservation and Natural Resources?
Safety.
Safety and natural resources.
Safety and Natural Resources.
Is there discussion?
Second. You made a motion.
You did make a motion, so it's been moved and seconded?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So is there discussion? Any further discussion?
Oh, are you talking to the audience?
No, actually, I was talking to you, and I do think that we've kind of worked ourselves around this issue pretty
Just have
comprehensively. One thing.
One thing. To the list of own, operate, or manage, because I know that there's a very strong, there's a contingent of the community that doesn't like to recognize that the Forest Service doesn't own the public lands, they manage the public lands.
That's a good point.
And
So
I
would that be an
sorry,
acceptable
didn't want
amendment?
They operate them, correct?
Or manage?
I think that's an
I know
acceptable
that
word.
there's acceptable words in some communities here about
Forest Service doesn't own the land.
Okay, all right, I think we're good with that. So you're fine with that, Mr. Wooster? And you did have a period there that you were excluding rather than your inflexible edicts, right? Okay.
Correct.
I like that, that's good.
Okay.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded with the amendment to own, operate, or manage. So is
Just my personal opinion, I don't like it. I think that it's a principle that has no purpose in our general plan, so that's my opinion.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No.
Ted, what's you?
He was an aye.
That was an aye.
And actually, I'm going to be a no, too, because for a very different reason
I
than yours.
understand.
Yes, but the motion carries. All right.
I'm sorry, I know it's done, but I would like to object. I think you did not open up anything close to the final version here to public discussion. There was concern about Mr. Infacino. You dealt with that, but I certainly had comments, and I really think other people had comments on the issue before you closed it out.
Okay.
I mean, it's just astonishing to me that what you proposed, how Peter modified it, which reflects, I think, the overriding concern.
Thank you, Mr. Mayhew. I think I feel like we actually covered a lot of ground with this. And to be honest with you, I'm disappointed with the vote as well. So, not that that's supposed to, make you feel better, but I do feel like we really gave everyone an opportunity to discuss this item.
Well,
we've noted your objection.
I wasn't able to comment, and I think others weren't as well, and I think perhaps some of those things might have made a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So
Thank you.
then maybe David was right, and we should go back to the natural floor map, because we opened it up so much when you shut it down just a tiny bit. Now we're being...
No, I think we fell down in their eyes at the end, but up until then, we were in good stead. So, it's 5 o'clock?
Oh, it's public comment.
So I guess we're all in agreement that we will have the discussion on the other two items on the agenda next week, which were objectives and also the noise element. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So the next is public comment again? Yes. Come on up.
I just want to say that I appreciate the open forum today. I do appreciate that. It just bothered me a little bit when after all of this, one of our decision makers hasn't been moved at all. So I'm just, you come in with your decision already made, and then doesn't matter what anybody says, pretty much it's going to stick to it. So I think there were a lot of good points made today. So thank you for the open forum.
One of our decision makers.
I too want to thank you guys for the work you did. It was quite amazing to watch. You did an excellent job. This was not easy to do, because I've taken, some of these elements and tried to read through them and come up with, it's not easy. So you guys were very well organized, and I think you did an excellent job.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Okay. I'd just like to also thank my fellow commissioners for your thoughtful discussion and respect for each other, and for listening and working through a lot of, I think, were, pretty complicated and difficult issues. And I just want to say thank you all for doing such a great job today.
And I want to thank you all for proving me wrong, because I didn't think we could merge all that. So good job.
Yes, thank you very much, and we will,
I have a question.
yes.
Does the planning department plan on sending us any comments on Mr. Infacino's email that got sent out last night?
I think that
will-
there will be some follow-up potentially.
I would like to, I know the county council's position, as it was stated on June 30th by Ms. Stedfeld, with the concern about objectives, measurable objectives, and the potential for that to be a vulnerability for the county in its general plan. And so I know that Mr. Infacino has cited to some legal sources indicating why he thinks that we need to be more specific in that regard. I would like an opportunity to research that, and maybe I could, brief the planning commission on whether there's anything he's stated in here or cited to that would change the county council's position.
I would find that
with
very
respect to-
helpful.
Yeah.
Because when I read that last night after dinner or something, I went, oh no. And we're just going to be dealing with this tomorrow, and all this discussion is going to be live, and you're going to get peppered with a bunch of questions based upon a kind of a brief that you may or may not have had time to consider.
So I just think, the safest course of action, I think, would be just to take a look at that and see if
What
at
the
least our
relevance is,
office,
yeah.
we're not looking at any policy point of view, we're just looking at protecting the county. And so just take a look at it and see whether that would change our position at all in our office, so.
That would be great. So just for people in the listening public too, so next week, we will be reviewing the objectives, the noise element, and also the introduction to the general plan.
And you did just receive a packet that has a staff report on the introduction and some suggested edits. That will be available online as well.
I'm sorry, say that again?
That will be available online for
Which
the public.
one?
The introduction.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
For people who don't, you were given it, but for people who don't have it.
Oh.
Yeah. They can access
Did
it
you
online.
do an edited version? Is that what?
There is yes, there's some recommended edits attached to it. Based on today's discussion, there was some additional language that you had directed me to include, some of the language that you had prepared. So there will be a follow-up edit to that. I'll try to get out as quickly as possible. So we have 3 items on. That next week is the 30th. We have meeting time available on the 6th of August. The next element up was going to be land use. We did just receive another appeal on the asphalt plant today. We've got appeals scheduled for the board, tentatively scheduled for the 11th, and the follow-up appeal for construction on the 13th. That is going to take a great deal of time to prepare for that still. I think that I would like to carry the land use element over till the following meeting after that, so that would be the 20th, rather than try to prepare something. The bulk of the comments that we received are on the land use element and the policies, and trying to organize those, and I'm afraid that I will have a incomplete job of trying to get that on for the 6th, given everything else that's going on. So we may or may not have a meeting on the 6th. Is what I'm trying to get. So if we need to carry over for some reason the discussion next week, we need more time, we can do it in the 6th. Otherwise, it'll give you guys a break on the 6th for a meeting. And give Neil a chance to have a more thorough review of all the land use comments.
Okay.
And that will just be a beginning discussion. That's probably going to take several meetings to get through all of land use.
All
That's all I
righty.
have.
Any other comments? Okay, we're not, well, this item's continued to the next meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, same thing, discussion on the general plan, and so we're adjourned. Yes.
Thank you.